Good evening. I'm Carolyn Rye, Chair of the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach, and I hereby call this meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. on this 10th day of November 2020. Pursuant to the state of emergency related to the COVID-19 pandemic, the governor's executive orders, the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, as amended by the Virginia General Assembly, and the school board's April 7th, 2020 emergency resolution, the school board and selected staff members will meet in person at the school administration building. However, at this time, it's impractical and unsafe to allow other persons to attend the school board meeting due to physical distancing and safety precautions related to the pandemic. Members of the public will be able to observe this meeting through live streaming on vbschools.com, broadcast on VBTV Channel 47, and on Zoom. And with that, Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll and announce board members present?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Present in school board chambers are Chairwoman Rye, Ms. Anderson, Ms. Weems, Mr. Edwards, Ms. Holtz, Ms. Owens, Ms. Felton, Ms. Riggs, and attending via Zoom is Ms. Melnick, Ms. Manning, and Ms. Hughes.
Thank you. And Mrs. Melnick has asked me to share that she has just returned from out-of-state travel that involved plane travel, and out of precaution to herself and us is participating via Zoom. Okay, with that, we'll take a moment for a moment of silence. And please stand as you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, that brings us to agenda item 5, student, employee, and public awards and recognitions. We have 4 this evening, and we will start with Mrs. Weems, National PTA Reflections winner.
All right, thank you. Tonight, we as a board had the pleasure of recognizing both division staff members and a student who have been awarded or recognized during state, multi-state, or national competitions or events, or who have achieved something that is above and beyond the scope of regular work performance. With that in mind, we are pleased to announce the following students and staff as recipients of school board recognitions for November 2020. The first one is Casey Colton. This spring, Casey, who was a student at Virginia Beach Middle last year when she won this award, but who is now at Salem High School's Visual and Performing Arts Academy, was named by the National PTA as their 2019-2020 Reflections winner for visual arts, using the theme Look Within. More than 300,000 students in pre-K through grade 12 from across the country and U.S. schools overseas created original works of art as part of the 2019-2020 Reflections program. From there, 7 students were named Outstanding Interpretation winners, which is the highest achievement in the Reflections program. Casey won the category of visual arts, and she used her battle with a painful disease as inspiration for her painting, Burn to Born. Casey's winning painting is viewable on the National PTA site, and Casey says her painting represents her strength through the disease, and much like the phoenix, I was reborn, she says. Congratulations to Casey.
Thank you. And allow me to note before we proceed that beginning this evening, we are displaying on screen here our recognition recipients. So with that, number 2, VBCPS Citywide Teacher of the Year, Mrs. Riggs.
Next, we want to send congratulations to Mr. Daniel Ramos, Jr. As you may have seen, earlier this year, he was named the 2021 VBCPS Citywide Teacher of the Year. Mr. Ramos teaches heating, ventilation, and air conditioning at the Virginia Beach Technical and Career Education Center. After graduating from Tallwood High School and completing the HVAC program at the Tech Center, he worked for nearly a decade at All Seasons Heating and Cooling. It was there that he earned his Virginia HVAC, Master Tradesman, and Gas Fitter licenses, and developed a training curriculum for new technicians. He brought these skills back to the Tech Center and took the slot made available when his former instructor retired. During his 7 years at the Tech Center, Ramos has updated the HVAC lab, completed a third-party accreditation through HVAC Excellence, and led his students to championships at the Skills USA District HVAC competition every year. He is particularly proud of his class participation in the house building program for the Virginia Beach Education Foundation, which helps to support Virginia Beach City Public School teachers and their special projects. Congratulations, Mr. Ramos.
Thank you. Mr. Edwards will now read the Foreign Language 2020 David Cox Award winner.
Next up, Rachel K. Thompson, who is a Spanish teacher at Princess Anne High School and was VBCPS's 2020 Citywide Teacher of the Year. I was lucky. Was recognized by Flava, which is the Foreign Language Association of Virginia, as the 2020 David Cox Award winner. This award recognizes a foreign language educator in grades K through 12 who has demonstrated excellence in foreign language instruction. Flava is an organization of professionals and students in both education and business who have a common interest in promoting and utilizing world languages to accomplish their various goals. Flava works to promote and enhance the study of teaching and learning, use and appreciation of foreign languages, cultures, and literatures. Rachel discovered her love of teaching after substituting and has now been teaching for 16 years, all with VBCPS, and was previously named the Distinguished Educator of the Year for Princess Anne High School in 2009, 2010, and 2018, and Rookie Foreign Language Teacher of the Year back in 2006. In addition to her hours in the classroom, Thompson devotes her time to support the school's Model UN team and Operation Smile Club, sponsors the P8 Princess Anne High School Gay Straight Alliance, serves as co-chair of the School Planning Council, and helps as an interpreter for Spanish-speaking students during division events. Please join me in congratulating Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. And that we conclude with the 2020 Gifted Coordinator Award, Ms. Owens. Okay.
Okay. Finally, we have Dawn Swallow Wilkins McCory, who is well known around the division as Dawn, and is a coordinator in the Department of Teaching and Learning in the Office of Gifted Programs. Dawn was the recipient of a 2020 Gifted Coordinator Award through the National Association of Gifted Children. NAGC works to support the growth and development of all gifted and talented children. The programs and services Dawn coordinates focus on underrepresented populations, leverage innovative technology, and provide extensive professional learning opportunities. In her 21 years as an educator, Dorn has worked as a coordinator, gifted specialist, gifted resource teacher, and gifted teacher in Virginia. Dorn serves as an officer in several organizations, including the Virginia Association for the Gifted, Virginia Advisory Committee for the Education of the Gifted, and she is a supporting emotional needs for the gifted model parent gifted facilitator. Currently, she is a doctoral candidate at Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University in Education Leadership and Policy Studies. Congratulations, Ms. Wilkins McCory. And this, good. Let's clap her. Okay, that's you. You're going to conclude it, right?
Okay, we certainly wish they could all be here in person, but we hope each of these award winners understands and realizes how proud we are of you. All right, adoption of the agenda. Are there any modifications to this evening's formal meeting agenda? Hearing none, a motion to approve.
So moved.
Mr. Edwards and Mrs. Anderson, a second. Please show your approval with a raised hand.
Ms. Melnick, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Madam Chair, we have a unanimous vote.
Thank you. All right, so superintendent's report. Dr. Spence, we welcome your report.
Thank you, and good evening, Madam Chairwoman and members of the board. Here are just a few items of interest and celebration for you and our families this evening. First, as a reminder, all schools and administrative buildings will be closed tomorrow, Wednesday, November the 11th, in honor of Veterans Day. And in observance of the Thanksgiving holiday, all schools and administrative offices will operate on an adjusted dismissal on Wednesday, November the 25th, and will be closed on Thursday and Friday, November 26th and 27th. Next, in addition to the other congratulations we hear tonight, we want to congratulate Amarat Kadri, who finished with a bronze award in painting for the 42nd NAACP National Afro-American Cultural, Technical, and Scientific Olympics, or ACSO competition, which was a virtual event this year. She also won the gold medal in painting in the local Area 2 NAACP ACSO competition. Amarat is a sophomore at Kempsville High School, and she attends the Governor's School for the Arts. Her artwork has been displayed at MoCA, the Art Walk near the 4th Police Precinct, and at Lynnhaven Mall. And during her free time, she volunteers with the Food Bank of Southampton Roads and Volunteer Hampton Roads. After graduating from high school, she plans to attend the Rhode Island School of Design, where she can continue to develop her artistic talent. And afterwards, she plans on becoming an art teacher, and we certainly hope she will consider bringing her talents back to VBCPS. Congratulations again. Up next, we want to congratulate Jalen White, who won 3 gold medals in playwriting, performance poetry, and written poetry during the local Area 2 NAACP ACSO competition. Jalen is a 2020 graduate of Salem High School, where she attended the Visual and Performing Arts Academy for Theater. And in addition, she has been an active member of the Emerging Young Leaders Program, the National Junior Honor Society, the Drama Club, and the OWEUS Anti-Bullying Club. She is currently now has gone off to attend Spelman College, double majoring in biology and theater, and plans to go on to medical school and pursue her dream of becoming an orthopedic surgeon. We can't wait to see where her talents take her. Next, we hope you will join us for an information session taking place virtually November the 19th at 6 p.m. to learn about the Environmental Studies program at the Chesapeake Bay Foundation's Brock Environmental Center, and to learn about the Virginia Beach Technical and Career Education Center and the Advanced Technology Center. This session will be hosted by program leadership from the 3 centers, who will answer questions from parents, students, and community members. Visit bbschools.com to register for this Zoom event. And finally, the Virginia School Boards Association held its 11th Green Schools competition, which is a friendly contest designed to encourage environmental policies and practical actions to reduce the carbon emissions generated by both the local school division and their broader communities. VBCPS was one of 18 competitors recognized as Certified Green School Division by implementing new actions and adopting new policies that are in green points. And of the 18 divisions, only VBCPS and 8 others were identified as Platinum certification winners. So congratulations once again to VBCPS for the continued focus on sustainability. Thank you, Madam Chair. This concludes my report.
Thank you. Okay, approval of the minutes, modifications. There's one I've discussed with the clerk, the reference to the employee stipends for concurrent teaching. The present language mentions teaching both virtual and in person, and to be consistent with the budget resolution language, dual is more accurate. So that will be noted, correct, Ms.?
Yes, Madam Chair.
So with that, a motion to approve. Mrs. Holtz, thank you. A second. Mrs. Riggs, all in favor, show with a raised hand, please.
Madam Chair, we have a unanimous vote.
Okay, thank you all. That brings us to the hearing of citizens and delegations on agenda items portion of the meeting. The school board will now hear comments on agenda items from citizens and delegations who signed up with our clerk prior to this meeting. In-person speakers will be called first, followed by speakers participating through Zoom or by telephone. It's not necessary for Zoom speakers to ask if they can be heard. Speakers should begin speaking once their name is called. As a reminder, each speaker has 4 minutes to present and will be given a 30-second warning before time expires. Once the speaker's time has expired, the speaker should stop making remarks and the next speaker will be queued to speak. Please keep in mind the school board invites the public to also submit comments through our group email account, which can be found on our website. And with that, Madam Clerk, would you please introduce our first speaker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our first in-person speaker is Kara Hughes.
Welcome.
There we go. Good evening. My name is Kara Hughes. I'm the mother of an amazing 8-year-old who adores her school, Rosemont Elementary. Since kindergarten, has loved all of her teachers, Mrs. Torres, Miss Bailey, Miss K. Roth, Miss Clark, virtually, Miss Tassone, and her principal, Miss Carrie Hall, and all the other staff there. I also come to you as a former EMS provider in emergency medical services of nearly 20 years, and now currently, I am now a proud school employee as a bus driver. Being that I've been a health care provider for more of my life than I have been a bus driver, I have concerns with bringing back the upperclassmen, mostly due to the fact that now we're being told to potentially increase our numbers from just 22 on our buses to 44. And we're going into the months where the flu on its own is going to become more prevalent because, well, we're just going to be a lot closer together because it's so cold. So in turn, that is my biggest concern this evening, is I don't think bringing the upperclassmen back right now is such the greatest idea. On top of that, we've lost way too many really great staff members, teachers, assistants, other bus drivers and their assistants due to this pandemic, because either they were not going to have the accommodations they needed or they felt that they were too much at risk, whether it was not enough spacing or whatnot. At least that's what I've been told. Most of them have felt they couldn't make these comments known, some that are still on staff. They're afraid of retribution. They're afraid of losing their jobs. I've never been one to back down. I'm not afraid to speak out if I think there's something wrong. So I said that I would speak for them, at least in that regard, as much as I can. I'm fortunate, though, because I can talk to my supervisor, Mr. Jay Wise, over in transportation. He and I can have a good conversation and exchange ideas, and I'm grateful for that. I want my daughter to be able to go back to school, but not right now. There hasn't even been really much discussion, at least to the parents, about what we're going to do for the second semester, whether we're going to have the option for virtual learning. We haven't heard anything, just as parents. Heck, even as an employee, I haven't heard anything. I need to start to be able to plan. I came back to work because I knew I was needed. I made sure I had plans in place for my daughter. But there's a lot of other parents out there that need to make those same plans or continue plans that maybe they have in place now. Or maybe they need to make new plans. And these folks, they need that information. So hopefully we will start hearing about the second semester. We were hearing about this first semester back in June, July already, about the options potentially. For
30 seconds.
So that was pretty much all I wanted to make sure was known. And I thank you very much for your time. And hopefully I look forward to hearing from all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Denise Willard.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here, and I thank you for your time and hearing me this evening. As the chairwoman mentioned, my name is Denise Willard. My situation is that I am a mother. I'm a stay-at-home mother. I have two children in the Virginia Beach Public School System. One is an 8th grader at Old Donation School. She's currently doing virtual learning, and the other is a 3rd grader at Thorogood Elementary, and thankfully she's back in school, so I'm very happy for that. The reason I'm here tonight is because I wanted to address what I think is what I understand is an agenda item on the agenda today, which is the discussion about whether we should bring our older children back to school coming this week. I understand the metrics right now are yellow and yellow, so we can bring them back if we choose to. And I'm here to ask that we give parents a choice. In contrast to the very nice lady who just spoke before me, I'm a very strong advocate of bringing our children back to school as soon as we can. My background is I was in the military for 22 years, plus 4 years at the U.S. Naval Academy, so I'm quite well versed, as many of you are, on the concept of risk assessment. We look at the risks that we're faced with and we make our decisions appropriately. We think about what might happen and what could happen, and in some cases, the worst case scenario. I've been following the science as you have, and you've talked to many more health professionals than I have, but it seems as if healthy younger people are not being affected significantly by this virus, whether that be a teacher or a student. We obviously have to take care of our high-risk individuals, and those who want to learn and continue to learn virtually should be able to do that. But those who want to bring their children back to school for the social and emotional well-beings of their children should be allowed to do that. My child, my 8th grader, is doing just fine, to be very honest. I stay at home. She's a great student. She's at a great school, and she's doing fine. But she's also been socially isolated for about 7 months now. She tries to have a play date when she can, but the truth is she sits in front of her computer screen from 9 in the morning until 4:30 in the evening and looks at a blank screen. And I don't think that's very good for her social well-being. When I think back to my middle school years, I think of all the friends I had and the activities I did, and granted there was no pandemic at the time. But I think we have the ability to make choices based on the risk that we're faced with. And I think we're stronger than giving in to what I consider in certain cases to be a somewhat irrational fear when the science is not there to support it. And I apologize if that offends anyone, but that's how I feel. Other parents are not so fortunate. Other parents cannot stay at home with their children. Other parents cannot give them, in many cases, the love and affection that they need and that they often get in the school system. So I consider myself very fortunate, but I'd like to be an advocate for those parents as well. And I may be running out of time. So I'd like to leave you with something that I read in the CDC guidelines on the 29th of October. And if you'll bear with me, the quote is, "The unique and critical role that schools play make them a priority for reopening and remaining open, enabling students to receive both academic instruction and enabling the provision of other critical services and support. By strictly implementing mitigation strategies, schools, and this is my emphasis, will be able to meet the needs of their students and community while reducing the risk of COVID-19 spread.
30 seconds.
All I'm asking is that you please give us the choice. Allow my daughter to go back to school. Don't leave her on the sidelines, because she's just as valuable as the elementary school children, and she's just as valuable as the 6th and 9th graders. And all the other children are as well. And thank you for your time. And I know you have hard decisions to make, so I appreciate what you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Shanika Humbert.
Welcome.
Good evening, members of the school board. I'm a parent of 2 Virginia Beach Public School students. My daughter, she is a 4th grader at Newcastle Elementary. She has returned in-person learning for about 3 weeks now. My son, who is an 11th grader at Salem High School, will be returning this week. Today I received the latest Alert Now email concerning one known positive case at Salem High School. My concern was very high. I called the school. I was directed to my son's assigned guidance counselor, who is Mr. Turan. And to my surprise, I was directed to a voicemail. And I left a voicemail to only have that voicemail not to be returned via phone call or email. My concern with the current cases that are raising, that the communication between guidance counselors and parents are lacking. Understanding that there's an overwhelming workload in the schools now, certain teachers are made to work 12 plus hours. And I'm concerned of the value of the students' education are being sacrificed. Now, my son, he has an underlying condition. He has end-stage renal disease. And like all teenagers, they yearn to be around their friends and have some form of normality. The decision was made for him to return when the health matrix was consistent in yellow. And with the rising number of cases, I am questioning the decision to move forward with the students, the remainder of the students, to return in person. Sorry, I had to take a moment.
Take your time.
How many more cases need to be reported? And there is a decision to take the health and welfare of our children and our teachers. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Leanne Garcia.
Good evening.
Welcome.
I come to you having just started to put all this together this evening, so the thoughts have all been out there, but putting them all together was a little of a challenge. I'm a little rushed, but I come to you tonight to advocate for my son and other students that are in the Technology Career Center. One of the beauties of the human race is the differences that we all have. We can't all be doctors, we can't all be lawyers, we can't all be dental hygienists or HVAC repair people. The uniqueness amongst us is what makes the world go round. The unique group of students, can I take this off since I'm distant?
I'm sorry, we have to ask that it stay on.
I'm having trouble breathing. The unique group of students.
It needs to fully cover, and if it's really a challenge, then we'll ask that you email your comments.
The unique group of students are comprised of hands-on learners. That's what drew them to the program. They come to the center to learn the real-world skills that they need to ready them for their careers. Unlike the conventional programs, career-focused learning has its remote limitations. That's why they're hands-on learners. These kids have chosen to focus on education that will make them employable upon graduation. Not all kids are going to be college-bound. I have seen my son wilting on the vine. He's 25% into his senior year and has yet to touch a tool, even though that's his passion and the reason he signed up. His Zoom meetings last no more than an hour, so he's basically working 4 hours a week for this program. There's 22 different programs within the Technology Center. Carpenters, dentistry, construction, HVAC. All these virtual learners have their limitations. By their nature, they need to be in person. Some of the special groups that have been allowed to return to school include our elementary school students, special education students, and we're working on getting the rest of our older students back to face-to-face. But what about this special group, the tech students? They should be spending at least 15 hours a week in the lab, hands-on. Should this group really be grouped with the green to green metrics? Now, let's look at the center. How can we make this happen? How can we get these kids back to school doing what they need to be doing to make them ready to go to work once they complete their education? These are our juniors and our seniors. It's right upon them. These kids get to school, there's two groups. The morning group is about 400 students, the afternoon's about 350. The morning group leaves, there's about an hour and 20 minutes in between the groups. Plenty of time to get things wiped down and sanitized. Now there's classroom learning and there's lab learning. It's my understanding that from the administrators of the program, that most of the labs,
30 seconds.
specifically the automotive technology, are expansive and, in their words, more than adequate space for social distancing. I've been in touch with TCC's program, ATI program, which are both private, very expensive programs, with the consideration of pulling him out of school, getting his GED, and moving on if he can't do what he needs to do here. I don't think I should have to do that. I think this is a special group of students
And that is time.
that deserve special consideration. And we should really think if they belong in green to green. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your dedication to our students.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, that was the end of our in-person speakers. Our next speaker will be Gina Lane. Miss Lane, please unmute.
And welcome.
Good evening. My name is Gina Lane, and I am a teacher and parent of two elementary age children in Virginia Beach. I would like to take a moment to thank Virginia Beach City Public Schools for stating in your email sent out last Thursday that you are monitoring the metrics to make the decision if it is still safe to return more students to in-person learning this coming Thursday. As you know, nationally, in our state and in our region and in Virginia Beach, the number of cases have started to increase over the past couple of weeks. I am very concerned about the current numbers in our city alone. And I would like to talk a little bit tonight about our numbers here in Virginia Beach, not just in the Eastern region. You see, today in the Eastern region, we sit at 5.2%. But in Virginia Beach, our 7-day positivity rate for PCR testing is 6.5. This means the community where all of our students and most of our staff live is at a higher risk than the metrics we are looking at to determine their safety and attendance. And it's trending upward. 2 weeks ago, we were at 3.9 in Virginia Beach. It's increased 2.6% in 14 days. This still does not give us the whole picture, though, because it only includes one type of test and not all of the positive tests in our community. If you look at our 7-day positivity for PCR and antigen testing, Virginia Beach is at 9% for the 7-day average. 9%, almost in the red, according to our plan. Again, this is only part of the story. Today, Out of the 234 new cases in the Eastern region, 73 of them belong to Virginia Beach. And another alarming statistic that brings me even more concern is that 60 of our new cases in the past week are children between the ages of 0 to 19. This is also an increase. According to the CDC indicators and thresholds that you reviewed at a previous meeting, our current numbers put our city in the red for cases per 100,000 and yellow for percent positivity. When this is the case, the VDH recommends that remote learning should be considered as the primary method of instruction, as described in phase guidance for Virginia schools. Back in August, Jessica Owens asked if we could consider Virginia Beach metrics along with the Eastern region numbers. Why are we not doing this? I ask you tonight to please take our Virginia Beach numbers into consideration. I also ask you to stick to our plan, and if our metrics are trending to red and we hit red, to please return us all to virtual learning. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kelly Walker.
Welcome.
Good evening, Chairwoman Rye, Vice Chairman Melnick, Superintendent Spence, and members of the school board. My name is Kelly Walker, and I serve as the president of the Virginia Beach Education Association. I would like to speak tonight on the National Education Association's American Education Week and the update on reopening the next phase. But first, I would like to thank the administration and the school board for suspending the requirements for Talent Ed and for providing a pay increase as well as a bonus for employees. Taking the requirements for Talent Ed off the plates of principals and teachers during the pandemic is appreciated, and the step increase in pay is a positive step forward. Members of the VBA hope to see increases in pay and benefits as a #1 priority as the 2021-2022 budget season begins. Before I begin my remarks on American Education Week, I would like to address the reopening update. As of today, the 7-day average of new cases in the Eastern region was 212.4, and public health officials, and I quote, warn that the U.S. could be entering the worst stretch yet for COVID-19 as winter sets in and the holiday seasons approach, increasing the risk of rapid transmission as Americans travel, shop, and celebrate with loved ones. Coupled with the CDC indicators and thresholds for risk of introduction and transmission of COVID-19 in schools, we are clearly entering into the high-risk zone and have been so for the past 7 days. Furthermore, members of the VBA are concerned that sending secondary students back to school when 11 out of 11 high schools are constrained with bringing students back because of a lack of classroom space and adequate staffing. Simply put, secondary schools are not prepared to safely return students at this time. The VBA would request of the school board that they postpone the return of additional Option 1 students until such time as the metrics drop and we have the resources we need to reopen safely. The VBA has argued since March that it is important to keep the health and safety of our students and employees as a priority when making decisions on returning to a face-to-face learning environment. And now, as the day when many students pivot to face-to-face learning environment approaches, we are still faced with many challenges. By the administration's presentation earlier this evening, we do not have the resources needed to reopen safely. Many educators feel as though stakeholders do not have their best interests in mind when making these decisions, nor do they have a voice about the safety of the learning environment. That is why many are throwing in the towel. I urge the school board administration to take these challenges into consideration before returning more students. I would like to take a few moments to honor those who are making a difference ensuring that every student receives a quality education in our city. An original sponsor of American Education Week in 1921, the National Education Association and the American Legion were concerned that 25% of the country's World War I draftees were illiterate. So they looked for ways to generate public support for public education. Today, American Education Week is observed in communities annually for the purpose of informing the public of the great accomplishments and needs of public schools and to secure the cooperation support of the public in meeting these needs. American Education Week's from November 16th through the 20th, and I ask of the public 2 things. 1, please acknowledge those educators who work hard every day to provide for a quality education for its citizens in Virginia Beach. Reach out and personally thank a principal, custodian, teacher, bus driver, counselor, nurse, teacher assistant, or other school employee who continues to positively influence our children and our community. The pandemic has presented many challenges to our schools, and the employees did not waver in their commitment to provide a quality education to all students. Second, I ask the public to rally behind our schools and make sure we have the resources we need in order to provide a quality education for all. We face a teacher shortage and crumbling schools. Funding cuts to our schools for over a decade has forced VBCPS and other school divisions to increase class size, stagnate pay, and increase workloads. Our school.
Walker, thank you.
Thank you. I was done. Thank you.
Follow up if you have more, Chair. Our next speaker is Jada Cumberland. Please unmute. Welcome.
Good evening. I hope you all are doing well, and I would like to wish you all a happy early Veterans Day. My name is Jada Cumberland. I am a junior at Lansdowne High School who finds it imperative that the school board hears from both sides of the story rather than only those students that insist upon in-person schooling. We should remain virtual or at least formulate a better plan before going back to school. This is not a decision that should be made lightly, so I would like to preface my reasons with my own experiences. Virtual school has been a very smooth transition for me and many of my friends, and while it is quite different, it has been very conducive to our learning. As you well know, junior and senior years are typically considered the most difficult. With this 4x4 schedule, we get homework from 4 classes that is due the very next day, which can become overwhelming. However, while online, I believe that we have the ability to complete homework and thus get more sleep than we would face-to-face. In addition, the level of autonomy afforded to us will certainly help us prepare us for college and the real world. We have also found ways to pursue outside interests with the extra time. We participate in clubs, which are now far easier to attend, video chat between and after classes to complete homework, and explore our own personal projects. While we would all love to be in person, we do not feel it is safe to do so at this time. A few years ago, the mission statement of the school system was ahead of the curve. With the implementation of the one-to-one student device plan, we are certainly doing well to chase this goal. We are not, however, doing our best to protect our students. Although it is not well known, I have heard many stories from different outlets of teens that fall victim to this pandemic. While it is true that many do not lose their lives, there are many lasting effects that can change their lives forever. I also do not trust a multitude of my peers to take this virus seriously. Just this past week, we were alerted to 4 cases at our school. I can honestly and wholeheartedly say that I would not feel safe returning to in-person learning right now. With half of the 3 upper grades returning on Thursday, I urge you to at least reconsider your plan. Students should not just be another statistic, another case to be added to the count. I would also like to add that you cannot gamble with our lives regardless of our programs. We will be unable to pursue our futures if we are not present on this earth. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Good luck to you. Our next speaker is Lindsay Nathaniel.
Welcome.
Hello, school board members and Superintendent Spence. 7 schools were added to the list of schools with COVID yesterday. When I started preparing my remarks, it was 7 for today, but as of right now, it's 10. We selected virtual for my daughter and hope that you allow it to continue. To be honest, my daughter, who's a sophomore at Princess Anne High School, struggled with virtual at first, but she's thriving now and wishes to stay virtual. She sees it as preparing her for college and being more responsible. I emailed the school board recently about a situation where a high school teacher was teaching in person and virtual without her mask on. The email went unanswered by the school board. It's the same teacher that I emailed about just a few weeks before that was allowing children to move their desk closer and joking about COVID. I heard and saw this with my own eyes. How many chances do you give with the children and staff's lives? I'm not singling out the teacher because the stories that I'm hearing from students are just the same. Too many people are not complying. I understand that mask wearing has become politicized, but face it, it is not safe for students, and more importantly, it's not safe or fair for the staff that has no choice but to be there around people that aren't taking this pandemic serious. People's lives are in your hands. Do not rush this. Now I'd like to take the remainder of my time to read an anonymous statement from a staff member and also a letter from a student. As a Virginia Beach City Public School employee, I feel that the district is going about this all wrong. You have a significant number of schools daily with positive cases, 3 or 4 a day, which is unsafe for staff and students. I feel unsafe. My anxiety has taken over to the point that I have headaches every day. I have heard a few times from members of the district that we have to think about the teachers and students, but how are you thinking about staff and students when you continue to jeopardize the health of those involved? when schools are open with positive cases. I've lost confidence in the district for making poor choices, not based on science, but based on politics. What happened to taking care of your people? At the end of the day, without teachers and staff, education does not exist. Now the letter from the student. Dear school board members and Superintendent Dr. Spence, I'm a 15-year-old freshman at Kempsville High. I want to say how much I like being a virtual student. I'm autistic, but very high functioning with Asperger's. And I would like to see the virtual classes continue for the rest of the year, maybe longer. I also am ADHD and have anxiety issues. With that being said, since being virtual, I've been able to reduce my medication for ADHD. I'm more attentive in my classes and my grades are the best they've been in 2 years. I don't have to worry so much about bullying or distractions. I understand some kids need a classroom environment, but please realize that some of us don't and actually prefer a virtual setting. One thing I do worry about is sending all students back too soon with this pandemic. I do realize we want things back to normal, but pushing kids back to a classroom isn't the way with our numbers on the rise. I worry about my friends' health, my parents' health, and also mine. Thank you for listening and for your time. Sincerely, Sean Allen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Becky Hay. Please unmute.
Welcome. Good evening, Chairperson Rye and members of the school board. My purpose tonight is to implore you to stay the course and continue with the plan as detailed before, returning more students to the buildings November 12th. We need to stop playing games with our students and their emotions. Just today, I had a parent message me that her student came home very upset because as the student left, the teacher said, you know, you should probably take everything home from you because you never know when you're not coming back. This is awful that our students are having to live with this day by day, to not know if they're going to be able to return to some of the normalcy that they've had by being in class. And so the numbers that have gone up the last couple of weeks fail to mention that just last week there were 80 cases in the local jails, and as well as several cases in the long-term care facilities that do not affect our students directly. Mayor Bobby Dyer over the weekend talked about hospitalizations being the lowest they've been since before school started, and that mortality rates are flat, and that we generally, although cases are going up, it's among the younger populations, and they are managing the illness well and are recovering well. Just last board meeting, Superintendent Spence said that the mitigations are working in our schools, that there are positive cases, but there has been no spread. These are individuals that are attending outside events and then are coming back to school positive, but they are not spreading it to their teachers. They are not spreading it to their peers. This is great news because we know that the mitigations that have been put in place are effective. As we look at the option 1 and option 2 students, how the breakdown has been given to us on a school by school basis, the highest percentage of option 1 students are in Kellam High School. When you divide that number in half based on the alphabet to return students 2 days per week, we're looking at about a 39% student population in the building at any given time, and that's on the high end. So with such low numbers of students, we know that the spacing is possible. We can adhere to the mitigations set forth in the plan that have been approved by the VDH. At the last board meeting, you guys listened to a doctor that talked about the mental health crisis going on amongst our students as they've been in virtual learning for several months, and that this is having a significant emotional and mental impact on a lot of our students. And these aren't just numbers, these are real kids that are struggling. I know we're hearing from families and students tonight that are just fine doing virtually, and that's great. They have that option to choose that. But for the students that really need to be back in person, we need to allow them to do so. And we need to continue with the plan that's been set forth to allow these students back this week. Briefly here, I want to end tonight with a note that was sent to me from a 9th grade student on how she's dealing with this kind of the back and forth and the unknowns from day to day on whether or not she's going to be able to continue going back to school or not. She is back in school 4 days right now and is doing really well and is enjoying it. So I just want to leave you guys with these words. I find it frustrating how you expect me to succeed when I don't even know where I'm supposed to be every day. As the schedule continues to change on a daily basis, I don't even know if I'm at school or at home. I feel like you just throw us around and expect us to keep up with the classroom expectations. With your new plan where only 2 days a week are spent in school, it begins to feel even more random. I have more anxiety over my schedule each day that I don't have time to focus on the classwork or grades anymore. Students with IEPs are left to flounder in this chaos because there's no thought or accommodation to giving us the consistency we need. I thought you were here for the students. Thank you. Have a nice day from a struggling ninth grader. I understand that there are some fear and there are some situations with families that want to stay virtual, but we need to remember the commitment that we've made to all the Virginia Beach.
Follow up, Ms. Hay, with any further words. Thank you so much.
Our next speaker is Marquis Miller. Please unmute.
Hello, my name. Hello, my name is Marquise Miller. I'm from high school in the ATC's engineering program. I'm a junior, and there are a lot of people saying that you can't learn this way, and that is a struggle. But to me, it isn't true because I'm on the honor roll, even though I take the classes of engineering, honors English, and chemistry. The students should learn online when they choose to, no different than if we were in school, and I enjoy virtual learning because there are less disruptions and it's easier for me to focus. People also say that we can't socialize there too, which is why we need to go back to the school. That's also not true because it is easier for me to talk to my friends and teachers, which will help me ask questions better in school. I also have to watch my mom, who is a single mom, go to work every day and risk getting COVID due to her and her coworkers also being scared because of underlying health conditions, and that she can also have the fear of visiting home for me and my siblings. Also, her coworker's daughter got really sick and had to be put in the hospital when the students were coming back to school. The cases are continuing to crack up every day. And there were 7 more cases in Virginia Beach today, and our school had 4 cases in the last week and a half. The board is pushing for us to go back to school, and the problem is that we shouldn't have to and take the chance of catching COVID. And I would like you to please think about the students, teachers, and other coworkers and workers to reconsider sending us back to school. Thank you.
And that was our last speaker, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk, and to all our speakers. All right, that brings us to agenda item 10, consent agenda. I will announce the items and then we will return to read some of the first group of resolutions. So consent agenda item A, resolutions American Education Week. 1, 2, National Military Family Appreciation Month, November 2020. 3, Native American Heritage Month. 4, National School Psychology Week. We also have consent agenda item B, English as a Second Language ESL program, and that was presented last meeting as an information item. And then consent agenda item C, recommendations of general contractor. And there are 5 listed, 4, there's Bayside High School locker removal, 2, 5 elementary school gym floors, 3, elementary school playground equipment replacement, 4, energy performance contracts. And could somebody remind me of 5?
It was just 4, Madam Chair.
Oh, I must be mixing this up with something else. I apologize. All right, so with that list, are there any modifications? Okay, hearing none, motion to approve. Mrs. Riggs, a second. Mrs. Weems, all in favor, please raise your hand.
Madam Chair, we have a unanimous vote.
Okay, thank you all. So we'll circle back to our first resolution, American Education Week, read by Ms. Holtz.
Thank you. Resolution for American Education Week, November 16th through the 20th, 2020. Whereas November 16th to the 20th is recognized as the 99th Annual American Education Week by the National Education Association to celebrate public education and honor individuals who are making a difference in ensuring that every child receives a quality education. And whereas the creation of this week has encouraged resolutions across the country to help encourage national support of public education, and whereas American Education Week is a celebration of distinguished individuals critical to the success of public education for the nation's nearly 50 million K through 12 students, and whereas the National Education Association calls for a week to be observed in all communities annually for the purpose of informing the public of the accomplishments and needs of the public schools to secure the cooperation and support of the public in meeting those needs. And whereas the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach is focused on encouraging and recognizing the support for public education, and whereas Virginia Beach City Public Schools is committed to relationships with the community and stakeholders through Compass to 2020 to increase public support and involvement in education. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach designates the week of November 16th through the 20th, 2020, as American Education Week in the Virginia Beach City Schools, and be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread across the official minutes of this board, adopted by the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach this 10th day of November, 2020.
Thank you, Mrs. Holtz. And now, National Military Family Appreciation Month. Mrs. Anderson.
Thank you. This is near and dear to my heart. Since I have two sons who are active duty Coast Guard currently, and my husband, of course, is retired Navy. National Military Family Appreciation Month, November 2020. Whereas our country owes the daily freedoms to the members of the armed forces, their family members, and loved ones who share in their service and sacrifice. And whereas we celebrate the exceptional service, strength, and character of the approximately 16,000 military-connected youth and families of Virginia Beach City Public Schools. And whereas we acknowledge that military families face unique challenges due to deployment, reintegration, service in combat zones, and frequent relocations based on duty assignments. And whereas the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach reaffirms their commitment to providing the resources and programs to support military-connected students academically, socially, and emotionally. And whereas Virginia Beach City Public School Board's Compass to 2020 strategic plan calls for the continued creation of opportunities for military families and community members to purposely partner with schools in supporting student achievement, aspirations, and social-emotional development. And whereas November is recognized as National Military Family Appreciation Month, now therefore be it resolved that the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach officially recognizes the month of November 2020 as National Military Family Appreciation Month, and be it further resolved that the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach encourages all school staff and community members to initiate, support, and participate in appreciation activities designed to recognize the exceptional role and unique sacrifices our military-connected youth make in our nation's best interest, and be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread across the official minutes of this board, adopted by the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach this 10th day of November 2020.
Thank you, Mrs. Anderson. And now, number 3, Native American Heritage Month. Mrs. Felton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution for National Native American Heritage Month, November 2020. Whereas the first people to inhabit North America, American Indians and Alaskan Natives, have profoundly shaped our country's character and cultural heritage. And whereas Native Americans were the first people to domesticate crops, build cities and communities, and establish great civilizations in America. And whereas the history, culture, and traditions of the United States have been greatly influenced by these individuals long before our founding, and whereas through the study of Native Americans and their traditions and values inspired and continue to inspire the ideas of self-governance and determination that are the framework of our nation, and whereas the school board of the City of Virginia Beach, through its core values, emphasize the importance of cross-cultural competence within our school division. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the school board of the City of Virginia Beach officially recognize the month of November 2020 as a National Native American Heritage Month. And be it further resolved that the school board of the City of Virginia Beach encourages all citizens to support and participate in the various school and local activities during National Native American Heritage Month. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread across the official minutes of this board, adopted by the school board of the City of Virginia Beach this 10th day of November 2020.
Thank you, Mrs. Felton. Our final resolution of the evening is National School Psychology Week, read by Ms. Hughes.
Resolution for National School Psychology Week, November 9 through 13, 2020. Whereas Virginia Beach City Public School psychologists support the development of academic and social emotional skills for all students, thus allowing each student to reach their full potential. And whereas Virginia Beach City Public School psychologists are valuable members of the multidisciplinary team serving schools, providing a wide range of services to students, parents, and staff. And whereas Virginia Beach City Public School psychologists are actively committed to helping students recognize their abilities, strengths, interests, and talents as these traits relate to their development and mental wellness. And whereas Virginia Beach City Public School psychologists help parents focus on ways to further the educational, personal, and social emotional growth of their children. And whereas Virginia Beach City Public School psychologists work with teachers and other educators in helping to meet the individual needs of students. And whereas Virginia Beach City Public School psychologists use their expertise in child development, mental health, community resources, and crisis intervention to develop and implement interventions to support educational success. And whereas with this shared approach to supporting student learning and social emotional growth, psychologists are considered an integral part of the educational process that enables all students to achieve success and wellness in school and life. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the school board of the City of Virginia Beach recognize the second full week of November 2020 as National School Psychology Week in Virginia Beach City Public Schools. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread across the official minutes of this board, adopted by the school board this 10th day of November 2020.
Okay, that brings us now to, that concludes the consent section of the agenda. Action is agenda item 11. Personnel administrative appointments, which were shared with us on SharePoint. Motion to approve, or any, just, excuse me, first, any discussion? Okay. Motion to approve. Mrs. Riggs, and a second, Mrs. Holtz. Okay, all in favor, please show a raised hand.
Madam Chair, we have a unanimous vote.
Thank you. Dr. Spence, do you have any employees to share with us?
I do, yes, ma'am. A number of administrative recommendations that you've approved this evening, beginning with Michelle Burton. Michelle has served with distinction here in Virginia Beach as a teacher at Point of View Elementary School, as well as a number of schools prior to that. Most recently, he's been serving as a teacher at Holland Elementary School, and this evening we're pleased you've accepted our recommendation for her to serve as the next assistant principal at Corporate Landing Elementary School. And again, we'll bring her forward at a later date to be formally introduced. I'd also like to recognize James Lash. Mr. Lash has served with distinction in York County as the Associate Director of Transportation and Warehouse Operations most recently, And this evening, I'm pleased that you are accepting our recommendation for him to serve as the next Executive Director of Transportation and Fleet Management Services in the Office of Transportation. Next, I'd like to recognize Stephanie Lopez. Stephanie Lopez has served with distinction as a teacher, most recently here as a teacher at Independence Middle School, and then currently as a teacher in College Park Elementary School. And we're pleased this evening that you've accepted our recommendation for her to serve as the next assistant principal at Pembroke Elementary School. And then finally, I'd like to recognize Damian Wilson. Damian has served as a coordinator of school social work services in the Office of Student, He has served previously as a residential foster care worker and therapeutic support specialist, is currently serving as a school social worker in the Office of Student Support Services. And we're pleased this evening that you've accepted our recommendation for him to serve as the coordinator of school social work services in the Office of Student Support Services. And Madam Chair, that concludes. Thank you.
Thank you, and we wish good luck and success to these new appointees. All right, information. We begin with welcoming Mr. Matt Delaney, and we have a number of textbook adoptions.
Yes, we do. Good evening, Chairwoman Ride, Vice Chair Melnick, members of the school board, and Dr. Spence. My name is Matt Delaney, Executive Director of Secondary Teaching and Learning. I'm here this evening to provide you with information regarding the Textbook Adoption Committee selection for multiple upper-level high school mathematics courses. The textbooks recommended for consideration are scheduled for implementation in the fall of 2021. Before presenting our recommendations, I'd like to thank Dr. Nicole DeVries, Director of K-12 and Gifted Programs, Secondary Math Coordinator Thomas Coker, and committee members for dedicating their time and efforts in choosing their best textbook for our students. During the adoption process, both open education resources and textbooks were reviewed and considered. In many cases, the adoption committee selected the textbook option over the open education resources due to some key additional features in addition to the physical textbook. More specifically, many textbooks provided a companion digital platform that provided students and teachers with full video lessons, enrichment activities, and other interactive components that enhances learning. In addition, many of these platforms provided assessment and homework tools similar to IXL and MathSpace for these upper-level courses. The committee has selected Statistics and Probability with Applications High School 3rd edition as its first choice for the Probability and Statistics course. The text is aligned to the standards of learning and curriculum framework as set forth by the VDOE. In addition, the text aligns to the 5 C's and our graduate profile approaching learning through a strong conceptual and applied lens focused on real-world scenarios. The online platform also seamlessly integrates with Schoology and provides assessment tools, a digital textbook, and videos to enhance learning. Furthermore, the text offers valuable additional instructional resources for planning and teaching probability and statistics. In addition to the curriculum benefits of the committee's first choice, the cost is also significantly lower than the second choice. The total cost of implementation of the committee's first choice over the life of the contract is $275,218.58, essentially 10% less than the other selection. The committee has selected Excursion in Modern Mathematics 9th edition as its first choice for discrete mathematics course. The text is aligned to the standards of learning and curriculum framework as set by the VDOE. The online platform provides access to videos, lessons, and practice for students. The assessment tools allow teachers to easily develop formative and summative assessments to be used in their classroom, and the online platform provides additional instructional resources for planning and teaching discrete. The Secondary Mathematics Textbook Adoption Committee was unable to recommend a second choice for adoption. Pearson was the only publisher to submit a proposal for discrete mathematics. The publisher did not submit a second discrete mathematics textbook for consideration, but it was more suited for a college-level course and was not aligned to the Virginia Department of Education standards for a semester course in discrete mathematics. The total cost of implementation of the committee's first choice over the life of the contract would be $136,354 $1,076.35. The committee has selected Trigonometry 4th edition as its first choice for the trigonometry course. The text is also aligned to the standards of learning and curriculum framework as set forth by the VDOE. In addition, the text aligns to the 5 C's and our graduate profile, providing enrichment and extension activities focused on real-world scenarios. The online platform provides assessment tools, a digital textbook, and videos to further enhance learning. The text also offers valuable additional instructional resources for planning and teaching trigonometry. In addition to the curriculum benefits of the committee's first choice, the cost is also significantly lower than the alternative. The total cost of implementation of the committee's first choice over the life of the contract is $168,337, approximately 40% cheaper. The committee has selected Alice to Java 3 as its first choice for the computer programming course. The text is aligned to the standards of learning and curriculum framework as set forth by the VDOE. The text provides a block-based programming language to introduce students to the fundamentals of computer programming before transition to a Java, a text-based coding language. The text provides a wide variety of engaging and relevant computer programming labs through creative storytelling and gaming, through project-based coding challenges for every chapter. The textbook adoption committee was unable to recommend a second choice for adoption. The other submitted textbooks were not aligned to the VDOE standards for computer programming and did not provide block-based coding language to introduce the fundamentals of coding. The total cost of implementation of the committee's first choice over the life of the contract would be $78,660. Thank you for your consideration of the committee's recommendations. I have with me this evening Thomas Coker, Secondary Mathematics Coordinator. We'd be happy to respond to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Delaney. Colleagues? Anybody via Zoom, Madam Clerk?
No.
We know all the hours of sweat and collaboration that go into each of these recommendations, and thank you very much. And we'll look, these will be on for consent next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, agenda item B, centering equity update. Hello, Dr. Parrott.
Good evening.
So if I may just jump in to say I think it's just about 2 months have passed since passage of the equity policy.
Yes.
And so we appreciate you being here this evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Chairwoman Rye, Vice Chair Melnick, distinguished school board members, and Dr. Spence, and our viewing public. I'm Lakeisha Parrott, the Director for the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and I'd like to share an update of the equity efforts to date. As you shared, Madam Chair, the last time I stood before this board was on September 9th, when this board adopted Educational Equity Policy 5-4. During this update, I will provide information on the expansion of the office and share efforts to act on our education equity policy, commitments, and equity emphases outlined in our newly adopted strategic framework, Compass to 2025. I'm really excited about this slide. The board approved Dr. Sabrina Lindsay Law on October 13th. She began work in the Office for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion on November 2nd as our coordinator of equity and opportunity. Dr. Law will support the office to ensure equity is embedded in the work of all schools through the development and implementation of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, and by providing leadership and support to the various stakeholders in our school community. Dr. Law is a proud 1998 graduate of Tallwood High School. Dr. Law most recent
post was as school improvement specialist at Kempsville Middle School. Prior to this role, she served as a social science teacher at both Salem and Lansdowne high schools. She has also led as a middle school dean in another district. I am excited to have her as part of the Office for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Dr. Law is with us this evening, and I will ask for her to stand to be recognized by the board. Today is a special day for Dr. Law and her family. Today is her son's 12th birthday. But don't worry for him, he's been celebrating for 2 days, according to Dr. Law. So very excited to have you with us, Dr. Law. As a reminder, the equity policy the school board adopted on September 9th outlines the division's belief and commitment for anchoring our practices, policies, and priorities for fostering barrier-free environments for all students, regardless of background or race, and to ensure all children have the opportunity and access to benefit from a high-quality education in our division. As outlined in the adopted Educational Equity Policy, Section C, Parts 1 through 3, which is labeled the Educational Equity Assessment Plan for Equity Priorities, Practices, and Review. The office is currently reviewing possible vendors to support the equity assessment, which was a top priority for this board. The components of the equity assessment. The purpose of the assessment is to assess and identify practices and procedures within the school division that have historically or are currently resulting in inequities of opportunity for students and staff. Components of the assessment will include the review of ongoing implementation of educational equity practices in the division. The assessment will also examine our district's driving documents. For example, our newly adopted strategic framework with the focus on the equity emphases, teaching and learning framework, the discipline guidelines, and other important documents. It would also include focus groups with diverse internal and external stakeholders. The findings and recommendations will be major components to create an equity plan to identify priorities, correct, and address the inequities that are uncovered. The school administration, with the help of this board, will implement this equity plan over the next several years. Professional learning. In alignment with our current strategic framework, Compass to 2025, with the focus on the equity emphases, the office continues to support ongoing, relevant professional learning opportunities. We work collaboratively with the Department of Teaching and Learning and the Office of Professional Growth and Innovation on capacity building around culturally responsive practices. I would like to share with you a teacher opportunity, and that is the Cultural Identity Badge, Master Badge, excuse me. It's an online, self-paced learning opportunity for our teachers using our Schoology platform. We currently have 30 teachers enrolled in this self-paced professional growth program. For our assistant principals, Dr. Law and I are leading an assistant principal pathway that we call equity-centered coaching through a culturally responsive lens. As part of the division's effort to build our pipeline of leaders, the office is facilitating this pathway, which is focused on equity-centered coaching, aligned with our division's coaching framework. The purpose of the LEAD program, which is the AP pathway, is to prepare aspiring administrators to become effective and successful leaders in the areas of leadership linked to improved student achievement. A final
a final offering that we're providing to our school and district leaders. As you may recall, in 2016, our division hosted the first regional equity conference. The regional conference was open to other districts such as Chesapeake, Hampton, Newport News, and others. Well, the work of Region 2 around equity continues with the launch of the Region 2 Equity Chats, which provide district and school leaders across the region an opportunity to engage in conversation about equity leadership that will result in actionable change throughout their schools and their districts. Ms. Camille Harmon, principal at Bayside 6th Campus, and myself serve on the design team for Region 2. The chats are part of a 5-part series offered through Zoom. Each session has a brief presentation, but the bulk of the time is spent in breakout groups discussing equity-centered guided discussions around equity issues that impact us as school leaders and district leaders. This office is busy. The power of 3 in the office, and we're busy. The office continues to serve as support to the division and community, in leading and supporting equity efforts. We look forward to coming back to the board once the equity assessment begins to review the timeline. At the completion of the equity assessment, we will begin drafting the equity plan alongside this board using the findings and recommendations to complete that plan. At this time, I welcome any questions and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Parrott.
You're welcome.
Colleagues? Well, I know we'll be anxious for, how about our Zoom participants?
No, Madam Chair.
We're so happy to have both of you here this evening. Okay, Mrs. Anderson.
I just want to congratulate you. You've actually taken the bull by the horns and you've moved forward.
Yeah.
So congratulate you on
Thank
this.
you.
And it looks like we're on a path now.
Yes, we are on the right path. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you.
Have a nice birthday celebration.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome, Mrs. Linetti, to Agenda Item 12C, Policy Review Committee Recommendations.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, school board members, and Dr. Spence. I'm Cami Linetti. On behalf of the Policy Review Committee, I'll be presenting the recommendations from last month's Policy Review Committee meeting. There are 8 policies on here. Not all of them have significant changes, but I'm going to go through them briefly. First one up is Bylaw 128. This is actually a school board bylaw. It has to do with committee, organizations, and boards. We've amended this a few times since we've adopted the last couple of years. Specifically, we are going to recommend an amendment to Section C, School Board Standing Committees, Section 4, which is the Governance Committee, and we will be adding a new section, recommending adding a new Section K, which will deal with authorize the school board to handle protocol and procedures subject to review by the school board regarding school board meetings and other matters relating to the school board. It's come up to our attention that we need another committee that can work with some of these last minute changes we have going on with school boards and presenting them. And we decided that we would authorize the governance committee to bring forward those changes to the school board. That would be the only recommendation for amendments to Bylaw 128. Are there any questions on Bylaw 128? Moving on to Bylaw, this is Bylaw 139. Also in the agenda. I'm sorry, is that Mrs. Hughes or Mrs. Manning?
It's Miss Manning.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question about that. It says subject to review by the school board. I think that that's a little vague. Does that mean that the school board would have to vote on it and approve it, or that just means we look at it?
I think we discussed this in policy. It would depend on the nature of what it was that came up during the meeting. If it was a simple matter in changing a format or time, it may or may not be something. If it was a significant change, it would be brought to the school board to review. I think we left it vague enough, just knowing that sometimes the meetings change or last minute changes have to be made to that, and then we thought the governance committee could handle that. Obviously, if it was significant, it was going to change a bylaw or policy, that would absolutely have to come to the school board.
I mean, I think I'm a little uncomfortable with it just being left wide open there as to, whoever's reviewing it gets to decide if it's going to come to the school board. I mean, this committee is doing so much that I feel like it's taking away the powers of the collective school board with, 4 or 5 other school board members, and then other school board members are left out. So I would really like for that to be defined a little bit more as to what is just a simple change and what would need to be required to come before the school board.
I'm sorry, would you like this to go back to the policy review committee to review, or would you like me to draft something and send it out to the school board members before the next meeting?
I'm fine with either.
All right, I'll tell you, what I'll do this time, I will see if I can draft an explanation, send it out to the school board members. If there's no objection, I will move it forward to the action agenda item. If there's a significant amount of school board members that have a concern, we will bring it back to the PRC for the December meeting.
Thank you.
Moving on to bylaw 139. Bylaw 139 deals with the agenda preparation. There are some significant changes in this section. It's come to our attention, some of the issues having is how we develop the agenda and how we make changes last minute to the agenda. There were some concerns about that expressed by the chair and certain members of the Agenda Planning Committee. So we have made some changes there, specifically in section C, which has to do with the agenda items. Starting at the beginning, we'll say prior to public posting of the formal meeting agenda, school board members shall present to the agenda committee meeting planning a request for additional matters. We've had some issues where people at the last minute are making changes for them, and we're trying to make it clear to you that if you want to add things to the agenda, please do that before we formally publish that. If you're familiar with our procedures, you will get the information on Thursday. It gets published to the public. We try to get them up 3 days before a school board meeting. Once it's formally published, it does become an issue for us and how we go about changing them. So the direction here will be that if you want to make an addition to the agenda, you need to make sure it gets back to the Agenda Planning Committee prior to its posting. Going on further in there, the addition would be the Agenda Planning Committee will determine what matters will be included on the agenda for the next meeting. The Agenda Planning Committee will take into consideration the time available for all proposed topics, the preparation time necessary for presentation, and other relevant matters before setting the final agenda. Items should not be placed in the action agenda without consideration being given to providing adequate public notice. This is the next paragraph. This has to do with adding additional agenda items after it's been published. After the formal meeting agenda has been published, again, which will happen on Thursdays, generally before the meeting, school board members, the superintendent may request of the chair that additional items be added to the published agenda, which would require the approval of 2 or more members of the Agenda Planning Committee. It's not been clear in the past how you get other additional items on there. After some discussion with PRC, the recommendation is if you want to add something after the agenda has been published, you go back to the Agenda Planning Committee for that particular meeting. And if 2 or more of those members agree, they can go ahead and make that decision. If they do not agree to do that, and the Agenda Planning Committee does not approve of adding the meetings, this is the end of that paragraph, you can then ask the school board at the meeting to amend the agenda. The problem is, once we publish an agenda, there are issues with the public under free information about clarifying what's on the agenda and making changes. So again, it's not that you can't change it, but if it has not been approved by the Agenda Planning Committee, you need to bring it to the entire school board at the meeting, ask them to amend the agenda at the meeting. One of the issues we have that we want to be careful with is that the public knows what is on the agenda and that we've given adequate notice to the public of any matters that are going to be added onto the agenda. Again, the procedure goes down, also explaining a little bit further down how citizens can make requests for matters to be on the agenda. There's a section that has been added under Section E, which talks about school board awards, recognitions, and criteria for students, employees, and public. This used to appear in Appendix B. When we took it out of Appendix B, we put it in with the agenda section. So you would have approved Appendix B last month. This month, we're asking you to approve the amendment to bylaw 136 to add this section here because it was more appropriate as setting the agenda to recognize what types of awards you will recognize. With that being, are there any questions on bylaw 136? Hearing no questions, I will
I'm
move on.
sorry, Mrs. Weems.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Cammy, when you refer to the agenda planning committee, I thought the agenda planning was just the chair and then it rotated between.
Correct. That
Okay,
is-
so there's only two on there. So how can,
And the superintendent.
And the superintendent.
And it's just the formal term for the trio.
okay, so it's, okay, I was just wondering if there
It's a
was. another-
bylaws
If
term.
there was another committee that I wasn't aware of.
Yeah, I think the concern was.
Glad we got that cleared up.
Yeah, it's not a new committee. The concern was that who should make this, should the chair make the decision? Could one person make the decision? We thought two people who had sat on the agenda planning knew why you planned the agenda. If at least two of them agreed, you could make the change.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no further questions on bylaw 136, I will move on to policy 2.1. Policy 2.1 falls under the section for administration. This is management plan and goals. The recommended change is in section A, management plan. We will be moving out the second sentence, and we will instead substitute each school principal is responsible for providing instructional leadership and supervising the operation and management of the school and assigned property in accordance with the policies, rules, and regulations of the school board and under the supervision of the superintendent. And there's some clarifying language, just minor editing that appears throughout the rest of the policy. There's been some concerns about how we run school-based manager, central manager, those kind of questions have come up the last couple of years. This sentence was added to this section in an attempt to clarify what our understanding of the school division is. School-based management. School-based management is actually the topic that's come under. We felt that this PRC have to look at this, that this was a better explanation of how we run the school division schools. Are there any questions on policy 2.1? Hearing no questions, I'll move on to policy 2.2. This also appears under administration. This has to do with the definition of the word administrator. After reviewing this, the PRC is not recommending any changes, but we do have to review it to maintain the 5-year requirement under the SOQs, so there would be no recommended changes, just a review. If there are no questions on policy 2.2, I'll move on to policy 2.3. Again, because you're required in the SOQs to review policies every 5 years, we looked at this. There are no recommended changes. This was amended in 2013. The only recommended amendments would be to remove the section that refers to related links and policies, as there are no related links and policies. We'd just be moving that. Otherwise, there would be no changes recommended. If there are no questions on policy 2.3, moving on to 2.13, again, this has to do, this administration has to do with job descriptions. There are no recommendations other than to remove the reference to the editor's note and a minor scrivener's change on a comma early in the first sentence. Are there any questions about policy 2.13? Moving on to policy 3.15, section 3 deals with business and non-instructional operations. This has been reviewed by your CFO and your Director of Business Services. There's some minor changes we've put into this section, specifically under section B, which has to do with expenditure of excess local revenues. On section 1, we're just clarifying that the agreement is between the City Council and the school board involving the actual overestimated local funds. Clarification is to add a new section D under there, which would read to make any expenditure toward an approved and funded capital project and or section E remain the same, and then under section F we would add F as otherwise approved by the City Council or school board. This has to do with what you're approved to use your excess local funds for at the end of the year. We're recommending also some removal language having to do with editor's notes and instead referring to the legal references. Those are the only changes we would be recommending for policy 3.15. Are there any questions on policy 3.15? Moving on to policy 3.19, also under the business and non-instructional operations. This has to do with certain special revenue funds. Minor scrivener's changes in the first section, but this is important for us. Under textbook funds, which is section A, the school board will maintain a system of free textbooks. And since, as you're hearing, we don't just use textbooks anymore, we're adding the term and other instructional materials. As you've clearly heard, under virtual learning, we're doing more than just textbooks. And some references to remove outdated language. And section B has to do with food services fund. We've just clarified for expanding the definition. We will be adding a new sentence. The funds for the operation of the food services program are derived primarily from the sale of food items and special subsidies from the federal and state governments. This is just a clarification of what those terms are. Further clarification under Section C having to do with athletic funds, just expanding out the definitions, will now read revenue for the athletics funds is generated from events, monies received from participation in postseason tournaments, and interest earned on deposits. The school board may also transfer from the school operating fund to supplement this athletics funds. We'd be removing the rest of that paragraph, and the new paragraph would read, disbursements from the athletics funds consist of expenditures for coaching and supplements, security, staff, event officials, postseason travel, equipment, uniforms, and miscellaneous supplies. The purpose of amending this is just to simply clarify what athletic funds include, and minor Scrivener's changes to the legal references to that. And those would be the only recommendations we'd be making to the rest of that policy. Are there any questions on policy 319? Hearing no questions, Madam Chair, that would be the end of the recommendations of the Policy Review Committee for the month of October.
Thank you very much to you and the committee for your continued work. So that leads us back to Dr. Robertson. The next phase of our reopening and this discussion began during workshop, and so we're at the point of resuming that. Thank you.
Yes, so good evening, Chairwoman Rye, Vice Chair Melnick, members of the board, and Dr. Spence. For our students, parents, and staff who may be watching this presentation from a remote location, I'm Don Robertson, the Chief Schools Officer for the division. Earlier this afternoon, several senior staff officials presented a detailed reopening update workshop. I'll condense that lengthy presentation down from 30 slides to 10 slides for information this evening, but do encourage anyone interested in viewing the workshop to do so by accessing the school board meeting page on vbschools.com. I'll discuss the topics on this slide as they are germane to our thinking and decision-making before sharing the administration's recommendation regarding the return of additional secondary students this Thursday. Not included is another review of our health metrics, as we spent the majority of the workshop going through those slides, but Mary Shaw will be available to answer questions via her home through Zoom. Finally, I'll open the floor for questions. On Thursday, October 29th, and again on November 5th, families received information on our proposed return to school for all Option 1 secondary students. Staff were informed on Wednesday, October 28th, and continue to be updated on school plans. Parents of 9th grade students were notified by their school that they will not be attending school 4 days per week beginning on November 12th, and will instead be attending either on Tuesday, Wednesday, if their last name begins with an A through K, or on Thursday and Friday, if their last name begins with L through Z. The Office of Transportation Services has completed plans to safely transport additional students to schools beginning November 12th, and in some cases, this required bus rerouting and bus assignment changes. Parents have been informed of this possibility and were asked to confirm their need for transportation in Parent View. After this meeting tonight, a final communication will go out to families to ensure they know what bus to ride and what time they need to report to their bus stop location on Thursday morning. Principals, in partnership with the Department of Teaching and Learning, continue to provide both division and school-based professional learning on Mondays to assist teachers in their preparations. Earlier this evening, you heard greater detail on these efforts. Option 1 staff who have been teaching virtually all year have returned to the classroom to make final preparations to welcome students on Thursday under the hybrid approach. Schools have completed their planning to safely provide breakfast and lunch to their in-person students each day. In addition, they have modified duty schedules to monitor student arrival, transitions between classes, and dismissal each day. In short, schools are prepared to welcome additional students to in-person learning on Thursday, November 12th. Moving forward, we will continue to closely monitor the needs of schools to provide real-time and targeted support. We monitor and assess needs during my team's weekly principal meetings, as well as in school and classroom visits by Department of School Leadership and Teaching and Learning staff. We monitor our health metrics and manage contact tracing daily and report these findings to senior leadership. In short, no day or weekend goes by where Dr. Spence's team is not in touch with all that is happening in our schools. and we are prepared to act accordingly to any new data or outcomes. As a preview and for your information, on December 1st, we will update the board on our return to participation plans for both middle school and high school athletics and activities. In addition, we will share our plans around term 2 or the second semester with the board. Earlier this evening, you heard Dr. Kip Rogers, our Chief Academic Officer, describe in greater detail the work being done by his department and schools to prepare and assist staff that are providing concurrent instruction. We know this represents additional expectations for our teachers, and we have seen it working effectively in classrooms across the division where teachers have returned. We are confident in our teaching professionals and know that in time, all will be successful in this model, as we are fully committed to providing the necessary support to meet the needs of all staff. I had to share this slide one more time, as I am thrilled at the tangible evidence, resources, and supports that can be found on this site. I think it is critically important for everyone to realize that this site represents the work of a team without a known blueprint, without known research. And yet the information provided here is serving to support teachers and staff better meet the demands of our new classroom environment. This is what sets Virginia Beach City Public Schools apart from the rest, and why we are viewed across this country as a model of an innovative school division. I also want to show this slide again, as I think it is vitally important that our staff know we are here, we are here, we are here, we are here. We are fully committed to support their growth and development. Through the partnership of teaching and learning and school leadership, we are leveraging our coaches, as noted here, to coach staff and utilize Mondays as a key practice day where staff have the time to investigate, learn, and plan for what lies ahead. In our recent joint teaching and learning and school leadership meeting, we focused on a vision of support that is based in coaching and includes specific, timely, and constructive feedback to teachers, individualized and group professional learning supports, and a full understanding that we are all learning this work together as one team. Earlier, you heard from Mary Shaw, Coordinator of Health Services, about her exhaustive efforts. She has and continues to consult with area health experts, to include the Virginia Beach Department of Public Health Medical Director, the Virginia Beach Department of Public Health Epidemiologist team, and area health experts and ad hoc committee members. On a daily basis, she and her team monitor health metrics, data, and trends from the Virginia Department of Health, the Virginia Beach Department of Public Health, and from cases that occur in our schools and buildings. In addition, each day, Mary and her team address prevention mitigations that include contact tracing investigations, communications to school communities, and in-school mitigations. Mary remains in constant communication with Jack Freeman, the Chief Operations Officer, Mike McGee, the Director in the Office of Student Leadership, and with me to ensure no information is missed. And this information is then relayed to the senior leadership team. In short, Mary and her team have done an incredible job in dealing with this pandemic and with the normal duties of the Office of Health Services. Now, I would like to draw everyone's attention to language from our Fall 2020 plan that can be found on page 15. And it states, using the health data designations noted above, families, students, and staff will need to be prepared to transition between virtual and in-person instruction. In general, Virginia Beach City Public Schools will follow the guidelines above, although the individual circumstances of each scenario, school level, community level, may dictate a different timeline or decision across schools. In every case, Virginia Beach City Public Schools will work with the Virginia Department of Health to make and communicate those decisions. Dr. Spence has engaged his team and members of the local health panel to determine our next steps. As a result of these candid discussions, we are recommending we stick with our plan shared on October 27th to return the remaining Option 1 students in grades 7 and 8 and grades 10 through 12 to school on Thursday, November 12th. Students in grade 6 will remain in school 4 days per week. Students in grade 7 will return on Tuesday and Wednesday, meaning their first day in school will be on Tuesday, November 17th. Students in grade 8 will return on Thursday and Friday, beginning on Thursday, November 12th. Grade 9 students will not be attending school 4 days per week, beginning on November 12th. Instead, all grade 9 through 12 students will attend school based upon their last name. Students with the last name beginning with A through K will report on Tuesday and Wednesdays. Their first day will begin on November 17th. And students with last names that begin with L through Z will report on Thursday and Friday, beginning on Thursday, November 12th. At this time, we are available for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Robertson. Before we open it up to questions, Dr. Spence, would you like to share any remarks?
No, ma'am, I think we're ready for questions.
Okay. We have Mrs. Riggs.
Okay, first of all, I have several questions, but the first thing I wanted to ask you, the 62 classrooms,
Yes.
can you explain that to us, please?
So we asked
What
for,
school has 62 class that doesn't have it?
we have a high school that has reported, and again, you've got to think about the configurations of buildings. I don't want to give the high school away, but when they went through and looked at if all of their students returned 4 days per week, so we're not talking about Thursday. For Thursday, we don't need any more classrooms. We are ready to roll. But if we wanted to bring back all option 1 students 4 days per week, the number of students in that particular building would require 62 other learning spaces. So we're not talking about that for Thursday. For Thursday, we are ready to go. All the schools have what they need. We're good to go.
So you're saying for the hybrid, we're okay?
Yes,
It's
ma'am.
just if we only had 4 days a week?
Yes, ma'am. If we had the challenge of, and that was a question that we had a couple of weeks ago, when can we bring back all of our option 1 students 4 days per week? So we went to the schools and said, what would you need? And so they did a building assessment, basically.
Okay. And I don't know who this question's for. It might not be for you. So I'm seeing that there were 15 cases in 2 days in the schools. Are they in the primary grades or are they the secondary grades?
That would be Mary Shaw. Mary, you're on the line, correct? We're going to make sure.
If she's not, I can tell you it's both.
Yes, I'm here. Dr. Robertson, is that Ms. Weems that asked the question?
That's Ms. Riggs.
Oh, hi, Ms. Riggs. The cases are spread out over different school settings. I don't have the specific data in front of me, but I think if you look at the dashboard, you should be able to see each of the school areas that were impacted. We may have had a couple cases in other areas of the school division.
Okay, thank you. And let's see. So are numbers? I know that we talked about the yellow. And we said when they were actually stable. Are our numbers stable? Are we looking at a stable set of numbers to be able to send these kids back?
So
As I said earlier, we're not looking at a stable set of numbers. What we're looking at is an upward trend, but we are not looking at what we would call a surge or a spiking of our health metrics. We are seeing a movement upward. That movement upward has not warranted us changing our current school plan, and that was supported by our area health experts to include the Virginia Beach Department of Public Health for making that decision at this time.
Okay,
But yes,
so-
there is an upward turn. It's described more as a slope of moving up versus a spike, a rapid spike upward.
So my question is, if it is starting to slope up, and we've got, what is it? Today is the 10th, and we're going to get out what day for the Thanksgiving holidays?
November 25th.
Okay, so we're looking at what, 15 days?
It'd be roughly 9 school days.
9 school days. So each group would have 9 days in person.
Each group would have 4 or more days in person, because again, we're sending them.
That's what I'm saying. They'd only have 4 each, right?
Correct.
Okay.
4 or more.
So we're looking at sending these kids back for 4 days. And then we're going to start traveling, because people are traveling. They are going to travel. And then we're going to have a spike, which is what the country is saying, what the health experts are saying. And then we're going to pull them all back again. So those 4 days are that important. Then if we just stayed virtual and these kids had a consistent every day, rather than bringing them back for 4 days and then send them right back home. That's my thoughts. I'm concerned about that. Whereas we stayed virtual, if we stayed virtual, this is a consistent type of academics, and it's not bring them back and then send them home. I mean, it's going to be an upheaval anyway. So I don't understand what those 4 days would do when all experts are saying it's going to spike. Now, I know we can't live in fear. I get that. But I am responsible, as all of us are, for not just our children, but for everybody in these schools and our community. Because the kids aren't getting it, but yes, they are getting it, as we've seen. But they're going to be bringing it home to their families in the community, and we have to be responsible. So I'm concerned.
So if I could just respond quickly to that. I do recognize that we want to litigate this every couple weeks. Last board meeting, we voted with the plan that we're talking about. Yes, ma'am, we did. We last board meeting, we voted on the plan we're talking about. And so the question for us as we were going through this preparation was to look at the health metrics. And what you've heard from Mary Shaw is that the health metrics don't warrant us not being consistent with the plan that we voted on, that you all voted on 2 weeks ago. That was the question that we were looking at last week as we began to hear the same things that you heard, Mrs. Riggs, that there's this kind of national surge and a surge in Virginia, right? Was to say, hey, we need to look at this. We need to consult with the VDH. We need to consult with the other physicians that we've been talking to. We need to see if this would warrant us pumping the brakes. And we got a resounding no, it doesn't warrant that. And so we want to just state like this doesn't need a vote. I mean, we're just staying the course with what was already voted on. And we just wanted to have a discussion with you to let you know what we were looking at, who we were talking to, and why we are recommending moving forward versus pumping the brakes. So I understand that. At the same time, we communicated to our community a few weeks ago that we were bringing these students back on Thursday. And the reason last week that we wanted to signal that we wanted to have this conversation at least was just we didn't want to show up like Monday after having those conversations with the health department and say, okay, you're not coming back Thursday. We want to like, hey, just know we're looking at this. Our plan, as we stated last week, our plan is to move forward as the school board voted on. And we just want to look again and we want to have that conversation. So that's what we're doing with you all tonight. But again, we're not seeing that the health metrics are telling us that we need to stop, that we need to move forward. Our mitigation efforts are working. We are not spreading in the schools. You heard tonight we had 1 case of related positive tests, and that was in the summer. We have not had that since we brought students back into our buildings, which tells you we're not spreading in our schools, that it's happening outside of our schools. And then coming into our schools, right? And so, again, the data that we have, the metrics that we're looking at, which are yellow with the positivity still remaining relatively flat, is not telling us it's time to pull back on our plan. It's telling us it's time to continue to move forward. And so you're now laying onto the table some hypotheticals, some assumptions, right, about then what happens after Thanksgiving and then what happens after the holidays. I can't operate on the hypothetical. what we should be doing is, and we will be doing as a administration, is communicating again with our families. Hey, this falls on you, and with our staff and with our students. This falls on you. Our mitigations are working. If you choose not to adhere to those similar mitigations outside of our buildings, and we see the kind of spikes that would get us to red, we would have to pull back. But I can't operate in that hypothetical and say, well, we're only going to have kids back for 4 days, and then all of a sudden we're going to have to stop. I don't think we can make that assumption, honestly. In fairness, I really don't think we can just make that assumption.
Okay, I just need to say one more thing. I think that I want to think about the whole body. I want to think about everybody that is in these schools. So I just needed to say that. That includes our teachers, our bus drivers, our custodians, families that the children go home to. So I think it's very important.
Okay, Mrs. Weems. And then Mrs. Anderson.
Thank you. I believe that Dr. Spence and his staff and all of us are also thinking about everybody, all of our entire community. So I agree with that. Yeah, I just wanted to just kind of correct some misinformation. I know slides, I think it was slides 5 and 6, and you kind of addressed it, Dr. Robertson, that said we don't have capacity to bring back everybody in option 1 for 4 days. And it was said earlier when one of the speakers said, we can't do it, we don't have the capacity, but we do have, I just want to clear that up. This was for if we try to bring everybody back for all 4 days. We can't do it. So we do have the capacity, we have the space, we have the staff, we have the resources, we have the transportation to do what we voted on 2 weeks ago and to do what your recommendation is. I just wanted to clear that up because that was misinformation earlier. So, and I guess this is, Don, you or Dr. Spence, I just want to emphasize that and I want to agree with Dr. Spence, we did vote on this. Are we following science? Are we
Yes.
following the medical experts?
Yes.
Are we in the metrics that we all agreed that we would get kids back in the building if we were in those metrics that we all voted on and agreed?
Yes.
Okay. And we're adhering to that. I think that, like Dr. Spence, we can come every 2 weeks and relitigate this because now what it's going to be is it might spike Thanksgiving. Then after Thanksgiving, guess what might happen? It might spike over Christmas break. Then you're going to come back and say, oh gosh, we're so close to second semester. Why don't we just go virtual till I mean, we could be doing this every 2 weeks and dragging it out. And we voted on something that was based on medical experts, the Virginia Department of Health, the Virginia Beach Department of Health, science, and we agreed to this. And I think that if we just keep coming back and saying, but what if, there's a slope, what if? If it spikes up and we get in the red, Dr. Spence is going to act accordingly because that's what we voted on. So I hope that my colleagues will agree that we need to stick to the plan because we are following the medical recommendations and we are following science and we are following what we agreed to. And if it gets more, like I said, Dr. Spence will act accordingly. Okay, Dr. Robertson, have you exhausted any and all possibilities, any and all ways to keep the 9th graders in 4 days a week? Just the 9th grade?
Yes.
And it cannot be done?
It cannot be done.
Okay. Have you exhausted any and all possibilities and ways to get our CTE students, especially those specifically that need hands-on training, hands-on instruction like welding, all that, to get them in more than 2 days? Have you exhausted all that possibilities and space in the North Landing building?
So we're also welcoming, I have offered to VOTEC and ATC, the option 2 students who choose to come back just for those classes to do so.
Okay.
All right, so because we're also allowing the option 2 kids back, we're maxing out our seats under the hybrid model, which according to both Mike Taylor and David Swanger, will still provide those students with what they need to demonstrate the skills that they need. Because again, we're opening those two programs up only to option 2 students who can get transportation to and from either the home school to take a bus to the ATC and VOTEC or to and from the ATC
Okay,
and VOTEC.
excellent. I love that you're doing that. So the option 2, if they again choose, we're not forcing them to go.
Correct.
If they choose to take advantage of that opportunity.
That's correct.
But there's no way you can get the option 1 just for that program in 4 days a week.
So Ms. Weems, to be candid, I have not looked at all of the different program numbers. I could absolutely see a scenario where one program that was under capacity might be able to do that for 4 days. But to look across all the programs at both of those sites and say that you wouldn't be able to do it would be disingenuous because I don't have all those numbers in front of me.
I would ask that maybe that we could do that at some point pretty sooner than later. Substitutes that are coming in, especially with the concurrent teaching, how are the substitutes getting trained to do all this? Because the teachers have, they built in the Mondays. Are our subs coming in and are they able to do it?
So if you are if you are subbing for a teacher who's face-to-face, you're reporting to the school building.
Right.
And when you report to the school building, as you would normally, you check in through the office, you get a packet of information. The teacher lesson plans have adjusted. So for example, last week my wife was out for the first time. She's a face-to-face teacher. She set all of her lessons up through Schoology, and rather than deliver classes when we were out, she did a flip lesson. So she posted a flip lesson in her Schoology page. So when the sub came in for the students that were attending face-to-face, because my wife's teaching concurrently right now, the sub was kind of more of a monitor of the kids in the classroom because they were accessing their material through Schoology. So when a substitute comes in face-to-face for a face-to-face teacher, they report to the school.
Right.
They go to the classroom. They have their materials. The teachers are pushing their lessons out through Schoology. Whether they end up being, like my wife created a flip lesson, it could be an asynchronous lesson,
Okay.
which would be okay as well.
Right.
For virtual subs, we have worked with giving those subs the ability to support those teachers. They don't have to come into the building because the teachers aren't coming into the building. And that's been a partnership with the Department of Technology and ITSs and TSTs at the school.
Okay. All right, and just one last comment. I just encourage my colleagues to stick to the plan that we directed Dr. Spence and staff to move forward. We agreed on the metrics. We agreed on who and when and how much time they were going to be brought back. And so I just really encourage you to stick to that because we have followed medical expertise and we have followed the science and we are doing it in a safe way that's working. And give these other kids who chose to a chance to be in the building as planned and as we have communicated. Thank you.
Madam
Okay.
Chair, please add Ms. Manning to the queue.
Done, thank you. Mrs. Anderson and then Mrs. Holtz.
She wants to know, is she in the queue?
Jessica. Now, yes.
Thank you. I have several questions. I'm going to start off with concurrent instruction. And I know that it's harder. It has to be harder, okay? And how, I had the same question as Ms. Weems. How are these substitutes being trained on concurrent instruction? Are they?
No,
Okay.
the substitutes are not delivering
And
concurrent
do we
instruction.
have enough subs?
At this point, we've been able to get subs for the classrooms that we've had operating in face-to-face.
Okay, and I just want to put this thought out there because it bothers me that, we already were told this evening that, we're all learning about concurrent instruction. Our staff is learning about it as well. I just hope you don't hold these teachers accountable for when they're learning concurrent instruction and you have to hold them accountable. I get that, but how is it going to affect their evaluations when they're doing the best they can? I think we need to keep that in mind, especially when we start evaluating toward the end of the year. We need to be thinking about this, and it's just something I wanted to throw out there because it really bothered me that, we already admitted that we're all learning this as we're going along. We're flying the plane as we're
So, Ms.
and then
Anderson,
putting the wings on.
we have made adjustments to the teacher evaluation system for this year,
Okay.
and they've already gone out.
And I just have to say this, that I agree that we voted 2 weeks ago to do this. But 2 weeks ago, we were on a downward trend. And we're not on a downward trend tonight. So, and the type of emails that we've been getting this past week, people have been, they're saying, I really didn't intend for my kid to go back when it's trending upward like this. So my next question has to do with, can students who have chosen option 1, can they now decide to say, I don't want to go back right now. I fear for my health, my family's health. Can I remain virtual? Is that possible?
So that is a multi-dimensional question. So let me start with, we have students in several of our schools on waiting lists because they want to get in.
Mm-hmm.
When we welcome back new option 1 students, we expect those option 1 students to attend school. At the same time, we never want a child to come to school if after going through that self-screening checklist, they have any of those symptoms. So, if you get up in the morning and you've got a headache that you can't explain, or you've lost your taste, or you have a sore throat, or you have any of those factors, you have a temperature, we want you to stay home. And because our teachers are delivering concurrent instruction, that student will still be able to participate in learning from the virtual standpoint. But if we have option 1 students who are choosing not to return when we have welcomed kids back, we have kids sitting on the sideline who want to get into school. So at some point in time, we would have to decide, we've been in school for 2 weeks, you have not shown up, we're going to give your seat away to someone else, and that means you're on the sideline until such time that we can bring kids back 4 days a week. And no one knows at this point when that will be.
So you're basically saying that if someone says, I just can't do it, I just can't take the chance of bringing this virus back to my family, then you might grant them the possibility of staying virtual for the rest of the semester.
We are not going to deny any family from doing what they believe is best for their child.
Okay.
At the same time, there could come a point where that family is forfeiting their seat in that class, and we give it to someone on a wait list.
But
And that,
they would be aware of that.
that's irreversible.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to clear that up because, we actually had a couple students tonight who said they would prefer to stay virtual. So if they know that they're willing to give that seat up and they won't get it back, we ought to be able to give them that option. On buses, I'm very concerned about, I don't know when we decided that we were going to do 2 students per seat. I don't know when that happened, and I'm a little bit concerned because that surely is not spacing. If we're going to do two middle school students per seat or 2 high school kids per seat, I don't know when that changed. Did that change just recently, or was it all along?
No,
Did I
ma'am, that
miss
was part of our original mitigations. So when we talked to the physicians group about the balance of risk
Mhm.
and the balance between getting more kids back to face-to-face instruction,
Mhm.
and was the balance of risk appropriate to sit up to 2 children per seat? The answer was yes, it is a better balance of risk to have 2 per seat to get more kids back to face instruction. So
Okay,
that was
I was just surprised
original
on
part
that.
of the plan.
Okay.
But also a reminder that the majority of our bus routes do not have that.
Okay.
And one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons that we've recommended the alphabetical hybrid model is to limit the number of students who would be on a bus at any given time. For example, if you sent 9th and 10th grade students back together, you'd be transporting most of them.
Mhm.
Whereas if you do it alphabetically, you're going to have juniors and seniors in a mix, many of whom drive themselves. And so you limit the number of students who need bus transportation. And we did also go back, as was discussed in here, and solicit parents to let us know if they now did not need bus transportation. Because we, as we indicated in our communication on that, that would assist us with getting our buses routed with good mitigations in place.
Right, okay. So that does make sense to do the alphabetical way of going back instead of the 9th, 10th, and then 11th and 12th, because he's right, 11th and 12th graders usually will be driving. A lot of them drive or ride with friends. A lot of them do.
And if I can follow up to what Dr. Spencer said, I'm not sure what the question was, but so as a follow-up, so from the Thursday that we communicated until the deadline that we asked that they submit, we gained about 100 seats in the morning routes and about 180 seats in the afternoon.
Okay, good. So parents really did notify you that they would be willing.
It
Good.
would appear that the message was received and we had a good response.
Okay. I'm just as, it's good, thank you. I'm finished with buses, but just wanted to let you know that I didn't like the idea that they could bring up to 44. Actually, it's 43 because, the last seat on the bus, you can't get two people in that last seat on the bus anyway. The very last one, the one that's on the same side as the bus driver, it's a teeny little seat about this big. Only one person can sit in it.
Yes, ma'am. So I'm glad you said that. So, and the goal isn't to fit 2 students per seat on every seat of a bus. Our
Okay.
goal is to minimize the occurrences
Okay.
that we're doing that and only do it when necessary. So the relative number of buses that are getting to have the majority of the seats being 2 per seat is relatively few.
Okay.
The
That-
vast
That makes
majority
me
will
feel better, a little bit better.
And could I just follow up to confirm what you said in the past, if my recollection's correct, that because of this alphabet split too, where possible siblings would be seated together, and irregardless of that, it is fixed seating, so it's always you're with that same child on every bus run.
They're in assigned seats, and that has multiple outcomes. So one of which it keeps, so it's siblings is one, if they live in the same general community, same bus stop, trying to keep those together. The other benefit of having assigned seats is when we do contact tracing, it's easier to conduct the contact tracing. So multiple
makes sense.
benefits associated with the assigned seats.
Okay.
Anything
That's
else,
all.
Mrs. Anderson?
That's all from me.
Okay. Mrs. Holtz and then Mr. Edwards.
I am glad that we're moving forward November 12th with the face-to-face meeting. But before I say any more about that, I want to ask Dr. Robinson, in the earlier workshop, you talked about we have classroom shortages. Am I right in assuming that you meant with the proper distancing, we don't have enough classroom space for kids? Is that what you meant by that?
Only if we needed to bring option 1 students back 4 days per week in 5 middle schools, I believe it was, and I can't remember the number of high schools, we would need additional classroom space.
Yeah, okay. That's what,
And that's-
I'm not sure everybody understood that, but I do, because there was that question about the cafeteria too.
Yes,
and-
ma'am.
And other places where groups gather. Okay. People keep saying to me, like, why are you guys changing the plan? We're not changing the plan. This has been the plan all along, to get as many kids as we can back into the classrooms. So I'm glad we're going forward November 12th, even though it's a hybrid form of that. But I want to make sure everyone understands, because I don't myself, if a student chose virtual in September, are they now allowed to go back to face-to-face? Or do they have to stay there for the entire semester until end of January?
Yeah, so the language in the plan was if you chose virtual at the beginning of the year, you would be in the virtual environment for at least the first semester.
I understand that because of the teachers. Every group needs a teacher. Okay, because I've had a lot of questions about that, and people don't understand it. Yeah, I think you have to spell that out a little bit better. But thank you for the work that you do, and I'm glad to see that, people are getting back into the buildings, and I'm hoping it'll progress. And if the metrics change, we'll have to tweak it, but we're not changing it. So thank you so much for your work.
Okay, Mr. Edwards and then Mrs. Melnick.
Yeah, that the one comment during the workshop was it actually you did have the 4-day preamble, but it was easily missed. So I would characterize it not as misinformation, but easily misunderstood information. And there was one other slide which I talked to Dr. Spence about. I don't want to bring it up, but for anybody that watched the workshop and saw there was one line that sloped way up and it was our line. That was a cumulative line. There's no way for a cumulative line to ever go down. So if anybody saw that and said, oh my gosh, it's going like that and you're going back. No, it's, it was a cumulative line to show, yes, over 2+ months, 80-some thousand people, which includes all of our staff and all of our students, have had 60. That's a very small number over that very large denominator. So I'm very comfortable and comforted by what Ms. Shaw has said. I do want to go back to a point from Mrs. Weems. Dr. Spence, I would, because of the importance of the hands-on, I would suggest that you consider looking at the VOTEC programs on a program-by-program basis. Yeah. And where they can be accommodated, and I know there's a transportation tail to this too, but again, a lot of those students provide their own transportation. So I'd really like to have you do that. You're probably already doing it anyway, but if not, formally do it. I know there's a concern about consistency and fairness and all that, but I think importance of getting as many as we can hands-on is more important than the perception of fairness in this case. So. Yeah.
We will keep looking at it. As you note, there are some transportation challenges, but we want to be equitable. But we'll get back with you on that.
Right. Okay, thanks. That's all I have.
Okay, Mrs. Melnick and then Miss Owens.
Actually, Madam Chair, it's Miss Manning.
Who's in the queue, or are you saying? Or?
Yes, that's correct. It's Mrs. Manning. I have not raised my hand.
Oh, okay.
Miss Manning is in the queue. Miss Melnick has not raised her hand.
Understood. Okay, then it would be Mrs. Manning next. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. So first, I would like to thank Dr. Robertson for answering the questions that I had at the last meeting regarding trying to get our option 1 students back into school 4 days a week. And I'm sorry that people misunderstood your slides, Dr. Robertson. I think you did a great job presenting that. I still want to get all those option 1 students back, and I'll still push for that, but I appreciate you explaining that and getting those answers. And I would just like to ask that you keep thinking outside the box to see what we can do for our students to get them back more often. And especially, I reiterate what Ms. Weems and Mr. Edwards stated about our hands-on learning. Our students with hands-on learning is so important. And if we can do something for them, as well as students who may be in a regular comprehensive school setting, that they're having classes such as labs, chemistry labs, things like that, as we're looking toward what to do next term. I know that you said you may be giving us a presentation about that at our December 1st meeting. If you could keep that in mind as you're making those decisions, Dr. Spence and Dr. Robertson, regarding classes, specifically classes that really require that in-person learning. If we could look at that and see what we can do for those students. At our last school board meeting, we had our physicians, our pediatricians speaking to us. And all three of them unanimously said that we have a major issue with anxiety and depression. I don't know that they use the term crisis, but I'm going to use the term mental health crisis. I have people constantly calling me because they know I have friends who are counselors saying, my child who's never had a problem before with anxiety and depression has it now, and we can't find a counselor anywhere. We can't get them in with a counselor for 3 months. And, you know, Ms. Riggs asked the question, are those 4 days really that important before Thanksgiving? And I would like to emphatically say, yes, they are very important. As a parent of 2 students who have not seen the inside of a classroom for almost 8 months, I emphatically tell you, yes, it's extremely important. We've got to get these kids back into the classroom so that they can socialize with their peers, so that they can meet their teachers face to face. They've only seen them on a Zoom screen every day. And I would just like to emphatically say, yes, that is extremely important, even if it's only 4 days before Thanksgiving. I also had another question for you that's come up a lot. And a lot of people, I think, are confused. Virtual learning is working for some of our families, and I think that's great. And I really feel strongly that they need to have that option. Just to clarify, if you are an option 1 student and you want to switch to option 2 virtual learning, can you do that?
So I'll address that. So Dr. Robertson did say earlier, you know, we're going to work to try to make sure that a student who just says, look, I can't be there, and a family who's really concerned about them being there, to work with them. There's a couple of things. One, I think we should leave that on a case-by-case basis because there are some SOQ limits on number of students that we can have in classes, even virtual classes. But in general, the other cautionary note is if should a student choose to do that, they may ultimately forfeit a face-to-face option for the remainder of the semester, and then depending on how things are going, they may ultimately forfeit that longer than that. And so we want to just be clear about that. But I think on a case-by-case basis, we can look at that, but we will also go back and discuss it as a team in terms of how we might more broadly communicate that if that is appearing to be a bigger issue. Right now, we haven't heard like a large outcry from our principals that this is happening, but we'll look at it.
Okay, thank you. So if someone has that question, they should be referred to the principal of their school?
I would have a child's counselor to talk about what their options might be first, and then if they have concerns after that, they certainly could speak with their principal.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Okay, Mrs. Manning? Ms. Owens? Okay.
Madam Chair, can you just now add Ms. Melnick to the queue?
Okay, thank you. I do have a couple of different things. I guess just starting off with, and this might be a Mary Shaw question. When a staff member or student, but I'm going to go with staff member, when a staff member tests positive in our schools, are the custodial staff informed about, I don't know, maybe not the identity specifically, but shown the classroom and walked through the areas where that staff member has been in order to ensure that the cleaning is happening in the areas that the staff member has been?
Mary, you want to take the first part, and then Mr. Freeman will come and take the rest?
Tracing investigation, it's very in-depth. We spend a lot of time. We interview the individuals in the building that we think are necessary to give us the clearest picture. And we do walk through everything that's done to ensure we're capturing any of the close contacts, to include staff visiting the building for related services and other things, to include students, to include other staff members they may have met with, to maybe even in lunch or a meeting or in just a meeting. So we spend a lot of time on close contact tracing. We believe it's one of our most important mitigations. I hope that answered your question.
I was actually wondering more about the locations. Is it being communicated to custodial staff? Because I'm hearing a concern that there's a confidentiality issue where, you know, they don't want to out the employee to custodial staff because of confidentiality, and the custodial staff needs to know what areas need to be extra sanitized.
If we have, Virginia Beach Department of Public Health gives us guidance for cleaning. We already have a process that we clean, a regular cleaning for COVID-19 prevention. When we have an isolated case in a school, we continue that regular cleaning process. Should we go to a deeper cleaning process and we haven't had to do that, that would be a special team coming out of our facilities custodial services office, and they would certainly know what areas that they needed to address. But it's very important that we don't share information unless it's necessary for health and safety to protect the individual's privacy.
Okay. So no special cleaning. Just whatever regular cleaning would regularly happen is what will continue to happen.
Well, but
and
to
what
be
that-
clear, the regular cleaning is not regular cleaning. It is cleaning that is specific to the prevention of the transmission of this virus. And we've talked about it before, and I think we've shown a video about it, but Jack, if you want to talk about, this is not like cleaning that we would have done in February of this last school year, right? This is cleaning that we now do every night in every classroom as a result of this virus. So I don't want it, when you say just regular cleaning, no big change, I want to make sure the community doesn't get an impression that that is not effective or that is not enough, because those classrooms get a very deep cleaning related to COVID with those those sprayers that we've talked about. And then what Mary's saying is if the health department were to say to it, so first of all, the health department has reviewed our cleaning measures and has said that is effective for what we're dealing with in terms of the virus transmission. If they were to say, you actually need to do a deeper cleaning, there's a situation here where you need to do a deeper cleaning, we do have an emergency team on standby through custodial services that is specially trained to do that. And that would be sent over, and they would have that area specifically to clean. As Mary said, that hasn't occurred yet. We've planned for that, we've prepared for that, but that hasn't occurred.
Okay.
I don't know if that helps.
It helps a little bit. It kind of brings into the next issue that I wanted to ask about, which is staff vacancies. I know that our custodial vacancies, my understanding, are still higher than they would have been last year, and we're asking for them to do double the work that they would have done last year, and I'm wondering how doable that is continuously. But can we get an update on where we are staff vacancies? Are we better this time than we were last time we talked about it? Are we worse now than last time we talked about it?
So I'll let the HR team take the vacancies, but as they approach the podium, what I will tell you is for the hybrid plan, we are prepared to be able to execute that plan. You mentioned the word double the work. So I understand the sentiment, but that's not really the case. So we've been, and what we're just talking about here, what we've been doing is enhanced cleaning protocols. And you saw the video of the filament machines that we've purchased, that we are able to sanitize very quickly different areas. So it's not like every night that a custodian has to actually put a wipe on a surface to get all those surfaces clean. We can clean broad areas and sanitize broad areas with our enhanced cleaning protocols. So we are able to do more work more quickly. Now, that being said, I'll let HR be able to answer the fill rate question.
So specifically, which staffing area were you talking about?
I think it would be helpful to hear generally teachers, custodians. I mean, we're
Okay,
moving
I'll
forward.
give you
so
a
I'd love to
general
hear.
update. Since the last school board meeting, we have seen a decline, significant decline, stabilizing of employees leaving. Now, keep in mind around December, historically, that's when people leave the area or get orders or whatever. So we still have about 60 instructional vacancies. But I did meet with my team today, and they definitely said that they saw a decline in folks leaving. I think over the last, since the last school board meeting, we had 13 new vacancies. And ultimately we had 24. So we're starting to swing the other way. We still have quite a few vacancies. We're doing everything we can to recruit. I was just talking to transportation guys today. My team met with them brainstorming on ways. We are working on a HR bought a tent, and we are going to have, this isn't in stone, but I'm going to share with you the concept of us trying to outreach, sign on the bus outside a large, if we can get permission to get in something like Walmart parking lot on the weekend and have our tent there, have HR there, and we're hiring bus drivers, we're hiring custodians, and other people. So we're shaking the box, if you know what I mean there. We're doing everything we can, beating the bushes, whatever you want to say. And we are, I guess I've been very concerned, and I shared with senior staff on a regular basis. So we did see a significant decline in folks leaving. Now, in December, it's natural to get an uptick. We don't have a crystal ball, but right now, it looks like it's stabilized a little bit.
Is that cumulative?
What do you mean cumulative?
You said you had 60 vacancies. Is that everything?
No, I said we have about 60 classroom instructional vacancies.
Yeah.
Yes, it was 70. It was teetering right at 70. It's, I mean, we
60 substitutes.
Yes, yeah. Now, keep in mind, in a division this size, you have substitutes on a regular basis. Well, yeah, that happens on a regular basis, just maybe not to this degree. Folks are out on maternity, medical leave. When you're talking about 5,500 teachers, so. But the numbers are all skewed higher, yes. Let's see, custodial vacancies, I think weren't you talking about custodial vacancies? We're down to 33. And that's better than it was. I mean, it's still not great, but we're up in substitute teachers. We're just under 2,000 substitute teachers. Let's see, what else? Anything else particular? I don't have everything here.
No, that helps give me
A general idea?
a general
Okay.
idea.
All right. You could always, if you have a question, you could always shoot an email to us and, so.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Thank you.
Then I wanted to kind of go back to the numbers. I know Dan mentioned he finds comfort in that there's only been 60 cases on our thing in the last 2 months. But that's almost more alarming to me when we say that there are 15 in the last 2 days. 60, 2 months, 15, 2 days. And this is when we're moving forward. But can we speak to the number of students and staff that have tested positive that are not included in our reported numbers because they took their test like on a Monday, and so therefore they're not on our chart because they wouldn't have been in the classroom 48 hours prior to, but they are still home, they still have COVID. It's still a percentage of our population. Is that something that we're able to speak to those numbers?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but I'll see if Mary does.
Yeah, Mary.
I can explain it differently.
Mary, do you understand that question?
I do. And I know that the information that we're showing on the dashboard and that we're showing on the graph is individuals that are in our schools during the transmission risk dates where we contact trace because that has impact on our in-person instruction. We do keep data on cases that are reported to us of employees and students that test positive that don't fall into that group. I don't have that available right now, but we do keep that data. Did that answer your question?
Yes, I mean, as best as it could without the data. I think it might be helpful if we're able to, perhaps at another meeting or just in our emails at some point, have a full understanding or picture about the amount of students and staff in our district that have had COVID or are home with COVID who are not marked on our dashboard, so that we're looking at the full impact that our schools are having. I have heard from multiple people who said, yeah, I started not feeling well over the weekend. I tested on Monday, and so I'm not considered in the transmission timeline to be listed on the school's dashboard because I wasn't in school on Friday. And so I'm curious what that percentage is. Maybe it's a very small percentage. Maybe it's double the number that we are looking at. And I think that it's important for us to be making decisions with full information about our student population and our staff population.
And to add, I would not say that it would be a significant change when you look at the school division as a whole and the numbers that we're seeing. The other thing that is a positive for us is that we are not seeing contact tracing going back to exposure between our students and our employees that are working together. Again, I talked about the community and the mitigations that are being done outside of our school and how we need to communicate better the value of in-person instruction and all of the health benefits of being in our buildings to our families so that we can kind of preserve that and keep that going. But I certainly can get with Dr. Robertson and talk about that other data request that you made.
And then this is the last kind of comment and then question. For me, when we voted and when families made their choice, my understanding from the board and the superintendent was that the community numbers going up would be the factor that we would look at as a trigger for when we need to pause. Not the numbers in the schools, but the numbers in the community. None of our metrics look at school numbers or school passing. And so every presenter today has acknowledged that the community numbers are rising and that Virginia Beach percent positivity has gone up 2 percentage points in less than a month, that we had the 7 notifications at our schools today. We did, or 7 notifications yesterday, however many, 8 or more today while we've been sitting here. And this week we acknowledged our first connected cases of spread in our schools. When we talked about students coming back in the yellow, it was explained that that's something that we could consider, but that we wouldn't do it while numbers were rising. We would do it if numbers were declining or if they were holding steady, because we didn't want to wait till green, which was our original plan. But it could take so long, it could take years to get to green. And so if we were maintaining in yellow, that we would look at when it's safe to move more students in. And so, yeah, I don't feel like that was my understanding, that I voted for, let's put more students in while numbers are rising, even though the CDC VDH plan that was presented with guidelines, was presented after our plan, said that we were already ahead of what they would recommend. But, I mean, if we move forward, we move forward, but it's not under the understanding that that's what I voted for, and that's, I guess it'll be what it is. But with that said, I want to make sure that I have full clarity, because maybe I didn't have the full clarity the first time, about what it will take for us to actually have that trigger, because it's not numbers just going up. How many percentage points do we have to rise in a certain amount of days? Or what, if we hit red, is that to turn it off and tomorrow we're not coming in? I want to make sure that people are, myself, I'm a parent in the school system, I want to understand before I make any other decisions with my child what the cutoff point is, because it's never been clearly laid out.
So if I understand your question, the cutoff point for when we go back to virtual?
Yeah, when we pause, I mean, because it looks like we are moving forward and adding more students while we're going up. So what is our
Well,
measures that we are looking at?
So the moving forward on Thursday is really kind of the final phase of bringing back the option one students at this moment in terms of what we can accomplish, right? As we shared, we don't have the space to do the space, given all the other challenges that Dr. Robertson shared on the slide about the middle schools and the high schools in the survey. So as of Thursday, we're sort of in our final phase of bringing back the option one students for now until things change relative to physical distancing requirements, unless we're able to come up with a solution that we haven't yet thought of, and we certainly will keep thinking about and talking about. My team's been doing that all along. So your real question is then, when do we, once all those students are back, when do we trigger that we reverse? Like, we're not going to reverse in phases. If we reverse, we're going to reverse, right? I've said all along, I'm not a health expert. And we've talked about this a lot. Like, we have to rely on the health experts, the Virginia Department of Health in particular, and also the folks that we talk to who are in the medical community. That's why, again, this evening, I'm recommending that we continue, right? Because that's what they're telling us. You're on track. Your mitigations are working. Even though there's a slope of an increase, you're still at generally flat positivity, and you're nowhere near getting towards the outside of yellow in terms of the cases that we're seeing in Virginia, in the eastern region, right? So my first answer to you is we're going to need to rely on the health professional. My second answer to you is if we get to red, that's the automatic trigger, because that's in the plan. If we get to red, the automatic trigger is we are going to go back to virtual until such time as that's not the case. So if you're looking for the clear answer is if our metrics hit red, we are returning to virtual instruction for all students. Now, before that, again, our thinking continually evolves on this, just like it does elsewhere, like in our community, right? But before that, if the health professionals tell us, hey, it looks like you should stop, or if the governor says you should stop, or if emergency management says you should stop, we're going to stop. So it's difficult for me to give you a bright line other than to say we get to red, that's a bright line for me. That's what our plan says. But if the health professionals find another bright line and tell us you should stop, you should go back to virtual, that's what we'll do. I mean, that's the best answer I can give you. So,
And is that just for the eastern regions? For instance, if Virginia Beach hits red prior to the eastern region in percent positivity, since we're leading them right now.
that would be a conversation, and we haven't, and we've been the
We haven't,
opposite.
right. It could
Up
switch either
until
way.
like
Sure.
last week, we've been the exact opposite. We've been
Sure.
below the metrics of the eastern region.
And then we rose so fast.
And we don't know if this is a blip or, if this is a trend. So that's part of monitoring and working with the health department and having those conversations with the health community. And so to your question of if Virginia Beach looks different than the eastern region, then we would want to watch that. But like, for example, one of the things I did here, and you actually heard somebody say it tonight, was one of the reasons for that high number of cases in Virginia Beach was because of an outbreak in our jail. So I need to know, like, is that a trend or a blip, right? And then we would talk to our health department about that and say, well, what does that tell us? What do we need to be thinking about? And that's what we say right now. What that tells us is, and what we've been told is, you're on the right track. Your metrics are good. Your mitigations seem to be working. We're not seeing replication, like the contact tracing isn't because of contact between two people in our schools. It's happening elsewhere. So, I mean, the best answer I got is, yeah, if the health experts tell us to stop, we'll stop. But the bright line for us right now is the eastern region. If I think it should be rather obvious. If we get to red in the Virginia Beach metrics, I mean, I think by that time we will have already been having a significant conversation between our health experts and the local health community about that. And that's a conversation we could have. It actually brings up an interesting point, though, and it's at least worth having the discussion in here tonight is, the give and take here between the board and the administration on these decisions. I would be concerned if we were to get to that place and the health department says, hey, you got to do that, if we need to stop, have a meeting and discuss it, or if I have the authority to go, we need to stop. My assumption is the latter, but I don't want to make those assumptions right now because of these conversations that we keep having. So it's at least worth putting that on the table for for some feedback and direction from the board, you know. So what would be your expectation for me in that environment? Is it to come back and get your approval, or is it let me work with the health, inform you of what we're doing, and then make those decisions for the safety of our school division, like I do with snow days, as an example, right? Like, and I don't want to glibly equate this with snow days, but just to give you kind of an example.
And I agree that that's something that I hope we will have a conversation about, and ideally, have a conversation, and we don't have the health folks here, and I don't think Mary's going to feel comfortable enough to be able to venture out and answer, but knowing what that looks like prior to hitting it so that everybody can see that coming. If we went up another 2 percentage points in another week before we get to the 10, do we need to start looking at it and saying, we're going up too fast, we don't need to wait till we get to 10. If we go from wherever we were, 3 to 6 in whatever span of time, and then 6 to 8 in another week and a half,
Well,
is that fast enough that we still have to wait till we get to 10 to take action?
and I think that example.
Mary,
Go ahead, Mary.
a couple things you need to think about is we are talking daily with Dr. Lindsay and her epidemiologist. We are watching the Virginia Beach numbers. When we talk about a slope, Dr. Lindsay and her team did consider, is there a risk of a quick spike and a surge that could throw us off quickly? They don't see that. They definitely see a trend. They know the holidays will have some impact. They can't predict everything, but their expectation is not for us to suddenly spike and surge. And that helped us in our decision-making, bringing kids back and all of the value that they will get from this, even though there is some unpredictability to it. So I hope that helps you realize that Virginia Beach numbers are on our radar. We are paying attention to that.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. Ms. Sowens, are we good
I
for
could go
now?
to the end of the queue. I do have one other thing, but
Okay, why don't
I've been going,
we'll
so I
get
can
to
go.
our other
Yep.
two. Thank you. Mrs. Melnick.
Thank you. I'm going to say this again. I have a college freshman that does not like Zoom, and he has experienced challenges this semester. As a matter of fact, all of his friends dislike Zoom and have experienced challenges this semester also. I understand that this is an incredibly difficult situation, but I'm asking this board to please not misconstrue and misinform the public into thinking that mental health is a new issue and directly related to COVID. Mental health professionals have been in high demand for years. I have many friends who have been referred out by CHKD practices because CHKD cannot accommodate all of their patients. That is not new. There are wait lists upwards of 6 months. That is not new. Quite frankly, there's been a shortage for pediatric and adult counseling for years. As I mentioned last month, the CHKD Mental Health Hospital broke ground on September 17th, 2019, long before COVID, and had been in the planning stages for years. This COVID situation brings no one joy. It's an absolute nightmare for everyone. And those statements are just unfair to our families. And I ask this board to stop using that as a way to get our kids back into school. It's just not fair. We have a solid plan to move forward, and I'm anxious to see that happen. Thank you.
Madam Chair, please add Ms. Manning back into the queue.
Yes, okay. And Mrs. Felton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate this moment. I don't want to prolong this conversation, but I would just like to take this moment to thank Dr. Robinson and thank Dr. Rogers and thank Mr. Freeman for answering all of my calls, all of my emails, and I know some of my questions. I was asking the same question, but in different ways. Thank you. But you took the patience to answer all of those for me, and thank you for that. I really do appreciate it. But not to prolong, but I would like to take this time to consider our teachers, our staff, their mental state, their love for their profession. And as one of our speakers said today, they have been unwavering since March. When this pandemic came in and took us over, they stepped in and they took up their mantle of teaching, and they have been moving forward ever since. Yes, I've been getting calls from teachers, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, and they tell their story about what they're going through. But at the end of the conversation, they say, Ms. Felton, I know there is no easy answer, but just consider us as human. And that's what I want to do tonight, and thank them for all that they've done. Before COVID hit, we had a deficit of teachers. We had a deficit of bus drivers. We had a deficit of staff and custodians. We had that. It already existed. But with COVID added to it, it just polarized it. No, I'm not acting in fear, but we need to recognize all those things, and we need to move forward and have a mind of wanting to do right by all. I do appreciate Dr. Spence bringing in our last board meeting, bringing in all of the medical expertise, and mainly bringing in Dr. Lindsay when she spoke directly to the effect of this COVID on our African American students, staff, and our Hispanic staff. I appreciate her doing it because they felt left out. They felt like no one was considering their situation and what they were in. But they wanted to let you know that thank you for doing that and making sure that they were at the table, that they had a voice. My last thing I would like to ask, and this is a question. The testing, I've had 3 families to call, and it's the students, and it's all males. Their fathers have COVID. One father got sick, and I'm just telling you the story so you can help me with this. He got sick on Saturday. Sunday, his symptoms really flared up. He called his doctor on Monday, and he could not get an appointment until Tuesday, so he decided to go to urgent care. Urgent care was booked, wouldn't take him in. He just got a test today, and he is positive. My thing is to you, Dr. Spence, and the staff, are we considering, or is it out there because, and maybe it is on the dashboard, are we considering telling our people where to go to get a test? I had one student had to go all the way to Chesapeake, the CVC, to get a test. So, and because it was cheaper. So are there mitigations? Are we looking, and Dr. Shaw can step in, do we have a place for our staff, for our teachers, just to give them security if this happens? Can I go somewhere without having to pay over $200 some to get a test? Is it somewhere that I can go to get tested and get my test done appropriately and at a fair and free price?
Yeah, so I appreciate that. I will speak directly with the health folks that we've been working with to see if I can give you an answer for our community members and our students. I can tell you for our staff, any testing related to this is 100% covered by our insurance. And so if they're not aware of that, they can contact the benefits office and they can have that conversation, but it is covered. And I think Mr. Honziker could verify that, but I know that to be true. So for our staff, if they're paying for it, they should be reimbursed by that. Relative to testing that might be available for others, we'll take it up and we'll see if there are things that we can communicate with our community about what the options are for testing and a way to do that to support our work.
And in doing that too, thank you, Doctor. In doing it too, can there be a list? Can that come through maybe our family engagement communication?
Absolutely.
That will really help a lot. Thank you so much. One of my students is an option 1 student. Father has tested positive. So how will we translate this to her? What would they do?
So that the child would need to stay home.
Okay.
They would be quarantined because they would be a close contact.
Right.
and they would be engaging and learning through their virtual platform, through Schoology.
So they will speak right directly to the principal and making sure that
They could let their teachers know that well, contact tracing would identify them. And Mary, in contact tracing, would they end up notifying you of that?
We have two situations. If the student has COVID-19, they're in isolation for about 10 days. If they're a close contact in the school or somebody at home or outside the school, it's 14 days. When our school nurses are aware of this, they communicate with the guidance counselor and with the principal to make sure that they're aware of it. And in the cases that I'm aware of, they've worked with the teachers in helping that student have continued learning if their health allows it and they're able to continue it at home. So we got a pretty strong process for that. So if somebody's falling through the cracks, we certainly want to know.
Thank you for that, Ms. Shaw. And there are some students, there are some parents, because they don't want to be targeted or minimized, they aren't telling. So they might call us. So I will try to mitigate that and move that forward. They're going to do that, but they aren't telling. And they just rather, because of the trust that's not there. But anyway, you all have been very, thank you, helpful. I will move forward, and if I need to, Dr. Robinson, I'll call you again and keep right on pounding on your door.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Madam Chair,
Thank-
please add Ms. Hughes to the queue.
Thank you, Mrs. Felton. Okay, why don't we let Ms. Hughes go next since she has not spoken yet?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, while there have been mental health issues before, this isolation really has cranked it up a bit. We've had healthcare professionals come in and talk about a 23% spike in mental health issues with especially our youth. I've had parents reach out to me and and say that one of them had a child that she had to hospitalize over depression, a child who has never exhibited any issues before. We've had some recent suicides. Isolation is very, very difficult. And while we have had things going on before, and frankly, some of those have to do with discipline issues, too much screen time. I mean, before this, we heard people talk about too much screen time can lead to certain mental health issues, attention span issues. And now this situation is necessarily creating a need for more screen time in addition to social isolation. I don't understand how anyone could not understand that. And as much as this group talks about social emotional learning, shame on you if you do not consider this mental health crisis, and that's what it is, as every bit as important as this virus.
For now, Mrs. Hughes? Okay, thank you for that. And Mrs. Riggs, do you still have something else to add? Okay. I guess for me, I just want to first say how proud I am of this board. We mirror the community, and we see it with the emails, and we see it here this evening, and everybody cares. There's no question. And I've used the two words that this has been approached in a methodical or deliberative and responsible manner, not at all discounting lingering concerns, because I think we all have them to different degrees. And I do trust this division that as we move forward, it's just as what's been conveyed. We'll do what needs to be done. None of these phases have ever been deemed permanent. It's just what we feel is the right or the best decision at a moment in time. But I do appreciate just the environment here, that everybody's free to express themselves and be respected. And that's what I have to share. So is there anyone else who wants another shot at this?
Miss Manning has her hand raised.
Okay, Mrs. Manning.
Thank you. Yes, I really need to correct what Ms. Melnick said, basically saying that I'm making these mental health issues up. I would like to quote from a slide from our pediatricians from the last meeting. The supervisor of child and behavioral health for the city of Virginia Beach stated that their services are in high demand. The department's new patient requests for services doubled in July, August, and September of this year compared to 2019. That's statistics from our own experts. Stanford psychologists recently did a study, September 22nd, that the COVID crisis has taken a psychological toll on people of all ages, but one group especially affected is teenagers. School closures and enforced social distancing have cut off many teens from major means of psychological support, putting them at higher risk of developing anxiety and depression. This is a real issue. The mental health impacts and the addiction impacts of this isolation are real, and we cannot minimize that. Granted, yes, this was a problem in the past, but it is much worse now. And we have to factor that into the decisions that we are making on this school board, and we cannot minimize them. And I will not allow it to be minimized. Thank you.
Miss Owens.
Yep, we're back to me. Okay. I don't have a whole lot. And I won't belabor the mental health back and forth questions. Obviously, a pandemic affects mental health. I don't know that anybody argues that. I think what needs to be clear is that school attendance is not a cure nor treatment for mental health issues. It can be a support. It's not a cure. It's not a treatment for mental health issues. So, that said, if we're going to move forward with a more aggressive return to face-to-face plan than any other city in Hampton Roads, then we need to be prepared to provide a more aggressive resource and prevention plan than what we have. I appreciate Ms. Felton mentioning the issues with the testing facilities, and Dr. Spence saying that we are going to look into that and have something through community, our outreach program, so that our families can have a location where they can go on our site and know where they can get free testing or where they can get testing access. I'm also going to ask, again, that our admin create an online form submission process in which staff, students, and parents can report concerns or questions that would allow for the information to collect in a database where admin, school board members, and our designated medical personnel can all see the information at the same time, the same information. The dynamic form should allow for concerns to be provided with or without contact information. I don't know how many months we have to be in the meetings and listen to people who feel the need to have anonymous statements read from staff members before we acknowledge that a better process is needed to gather, track, and address their concerns. While we're sitting here and we're getting questions texted to us or statements that need to be looked at the schools based on some of the information that's being shared, and instead of having people, teachers, staff, community members feel like they need to text board members, if there was a location that people felt safe to share this information, it could be a prevention strategy as we're able to address things quickly and efficiently. And I understand that we would love for them to just call the principals. But clearly, if we have to have anonymous things read every board meeting, we know that that is not an effective method for everybody to do, or else we wouldn't have anonymous things read every time. I'm asking that we have a place where our community and our teachers can express their concerns privately. It's not open to the public. It's not a frequently asked questions document for everybody to read, that things can get addressed as they're happening.
Madam Chair, please add Ms. Hughes back into the queue.
You're on, Ms. Hughes.
Yeah, I would just like to say the flippant school is not a cure for mental health issues. That was completely inappropriate. And I don't think anyone suggested that going to school was a magic pill. But one, we all need to be doing things to mitigate, to not create or compound mental health issues. And unnecessary extra screen time and social isolation are things that we can work on to help mitigate those. Additionally, there's a reason that teachers are mandated reporters. There are children that are in bad situations that already have things going on, and these things slip through the cracks when you don't have those extra sets of eyes on them. So it would be very short sighted to not acknowledge that all of these things are interconnected and contribute to mental illness or health.
Okay, duly noted. Are we ready to, are we now ready to move on to standing committee reports? And we thank the staff again for taking all these questions. Is there anybody who would like to begin with?
Yes.
Mrs. Felton.
Yeah, and I won't hold long. I'd just like to say that the Equity Council met on Thursday, November the 5th. It was a great meeting. We had a plethora of guests to come. We even had the Governor School for the Arts and Summer Residential Governor School to come as well. Also, the Mayor Youth Leadership was represented at this equity hearing, and they put out all of the programs that they have, summer programs for the city, which is the summer youth employment program, also the media program that they have at the Williams Farm. It was very informative. Most of the individuals that was on that site or on the Zoom meeting did not know of some of the things that we have in the city. So I would just like to say to you that the Equity Council is doing the things and getting those programs out to those unrepresented community, and they want to thank you for it. It was really great. I would encourage my colleagues if they want to stop by and stop in and to listen to what is going on. We have a very a very mindful, blusterous student representative that was there also. Mr. Jordan Lucas and Lauren Christian, they are doing great works in the community as well. They are the Equity Council student representatives, and they bring forth good information. So I would encourage you to and the audience that's hearing me as well, to stop in to hear us. The Equity Council is on the move, and they're doing great things within the division. Thank you so much. Dr. Parrott is on point. She's good. She's a great facilitator and answering all things that she's doing really well. And I just like to give her that thank you for moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I'll add a postscript related to governance committee, going back to the protocols manual. What I wanted to add on behalf of the committee, and specifically Mrs. Anderson and Mrs. Briggs, the tentative plan, we did mention that a governance committee member will be reaching out to each of you, and we'll get hard copies to those not present tonight. The tentative plan right now is to incorporate this into our January retreat as a matter of discussion too, so stay tuned for more on that. You did get an email from me about December 15th and superintendent mid-year eval, so if you need me to resend, let me know that. And the annual superintendent evaluation instrument, as we indicated at our summer retreat, is being assessed, and Mrs. Weems and Mr. Edwards have taken the lead on that, and there'll be more about that. And the newest, so new member orientation is something that every few years goes through an assessment. So we figured now was the time for one once again, and Mrs. Riggs and I will be taking an initial getting that jump started. And there is some time sensitivity with that, given the recent election. So anything else before we conclude the formal meeting, and we have some speakers waiting on us? All right then, so we will conclude this formal meeting. And I will go ahead and read about the hearing of citizens and delegations.